evening, everybody. This is session number 6. Ano na tayo? So we've officially crossed over halfway, midway to the masterclass, and we're about the tail end of the more technical, the nosebleed stuff that we're promised to give you. Sunod-sunod kayo, no? From investments to stock market to macroeconomics, and then now, even the first part, no, meron pa rin ganon. So may konting break lang tayo with Coach Val. But coming to the foray in the coming 2 weeks, wherein we're going to talk to you about session 7 will be about digital presentation. Hopefully you will like it so far. It's been a favorite also. Ang hirap kasi pumili ng favorite, sabi nila, kasi maraming mga favorites. Session 8 would be on personal branding. Okay, I'm going to be handling session 7 and 8. Session 9, Garrett and Ann will be coming in to do digital marketing and content creation. So more of an application already. And then session 10, as the ending of the program, the coach ng bayan, the mentor of mentors, Rex Mendoza, will talk to you about establishing a profitable and sustainable financial advisory business. And then we want to encourage you to come back for the graduation. Okay? Plus, we have 2 bonus sessions. 2 bonus sessions I announced ko na. One of them is me, and one of them is Mr. Dodong Kakanando. As to more details of that, we will announce as we're coming forward. Do not miss the bonus sessions. Technically, they are not part. Sabi ko naman sa inyo, sulit talaga yung pag-attend nyo. Technically, they are not part of the masterclass. In a way, not connect. Well, in a way, but it's a bonus. No, it's a gift that I have for you guys. And then after which, going through that, I will announce on how to be able to earn your associate financial planner marks now, the AFP. Although some of you already AFP and RFP, for those of you who can do that. Si Meg nag-attend na yan. Sabi niya, as in, okay? Sawa na si Meg sa ganyan, ano? Okay, so, with that, welcome to session number 6, and let us start with sharing. We'll talk about insurance. Ito ang hirap ito, no? I will now teach insurance to insurance advisors. O, di ba? Parang, Okay, ang advantage ko lang, I've been doing this maybe longer than most of you. Okay? So, I joined the insurance industry in 1993. Ilan na yun? Wow! 93, magta 30 years na pala yun. Okay. So, in 28 years ago, I entered the insurance industry, and I've had experiences in both life and non-life practices. So, later on, I'm going to talk to you about these things. So, our topic for tonight, wow, sabi ni Joshua, birth year niya. Okay, sabi ni Erlinda, kagagraduate lang ng high school. Pero panalo yung birth year daw niya, yung year na pumasok ako ng industry. Okay, sige, kayo rin. Tatanda din kayo. Okay, anyway, so let's talk about these things. So let's talk about understanding insurance. Ang goal ko sa insurance is we want to talk to you about the fundamentals, the basics, pero I want to go a little bit deeper. We want you to understand better on how it works and how to plan and how to use it. At the end of the day, most of you are financial advisors selling life insurance products, and some of you even non-life, and some even mutual funds. Pero many of us do not truly understand how it actually works in both scenario, and that's why we want to do that. So for life, a lot of your life insurance, so we do a review, and then some of you for the first time going to hear more about how non-life works. There are many facets of insurance. I cannot do it in the whole night, but hopefully I will stay within the 2-hour point. But we will not take it against you if you feel that this is too long, masyado nang madaldal yung ako or what. Okay lang magpaalam na mag-quit. You don't even have to just leave if you feel that it's too long already. So you don't need to stay and finish it. We want you, pero at the end of the day, we understand also na late na, gabi na, gutom na, and so forth and so on. Alright, so let us start. So we'll talk about understanding insurance. Now, for me to go through all of these things, I want to be able to I want to be able to talk to you about the principles first. Okay, the principles. We need to understand the principles of insurance, right? First and foremost, let's do a little bit of definition. What is insurance? Right? Insurance, okay, is a social device which provides compensation, okay, or indemnity. Indemnity is another word for payment for a loss which a person may suffer due to the happening of a designated event, either be it contingent or uncertain as to the time of its occurrence. So let's pick that definition first. First and foremost, very important yan, diba? It says social device. Bakit social device? First and foremost, insurance plays a big part of society in itself. So, and insurance, particularly life insurance, carries certain benefits. And number one, hindi yan part of VAT. Number two, premium tax lang yan. Simplified na tax yan. Number three, you can transfer the proceeds or you can transfer the investments to, without tax. So, bakit siya maraming benefit? Because largely, insurance plays a very important role in society. Generally speaking, when the population is properly insured, it is more productive. Why? If anything happens to you, you pass it, you get sick, you die too early, or nasunugan ka, or anything, you will not become a contributor to community, to society. You will not become a burden to society. So kung may nangyari due to for something, for an event that causes you a lot of losses, you automatically shift from being a contributor to the society, you can now become a dependent of society. So, ibig natin magbayad ka ng tax, hindi ka na magbayad ng tax. Baka ngayon nakakuha ka ng benefits. So forth and so on. So, insurance is given preferential some benefits, so because it plays a pivotal part of society, right? So, whenever you sell a policy, know for the fact that you're actually being people getting insured are actually contributing better to society. That's why it's a social device. Now, countries which are more progressive, you will see them, they have higher percentages of insurance, insured people. Both life, non-life, health, and all of this put together. Right? Now, kaya tinayo ang insurance is because there are risks involved. Okay? Insurance is an outcome of the inherent risks that there is. Okay, after hearing Marvin, hearing investments, hearing Alvin, you understand that risk is always going to be part of it. But the bigger risks are beyond investment risks or monetary risks. The bigger risks are what you call life risks. These life risks. Okay, now, risks are part of what we do, whether we're investing, whether we are working. And let me do a little bit definition. Risk, first and foremost, is defined as the possibility of loss. Okay? Risk happens when there is a possibility or probability of loss. There are financial and non-financial risks. Okay? Risk may involve financial loss in some cases, and in other cases, there is no financial loss. Now, again, insurance is concerned with those risks that involve financial losses. So, kung wala siyang financial loss, hindi siya pwedeng i-cover. So, basically, I'm going through the principles to understand ano ba ang scope ng insurance, ano ba pwedeng i-cover, ano ba hindi pwedeng i-cover. Now, there are also static and dynamic risks. Dynamic risks are those resulting from changes in the economy. Okay? Because of the change in the economy, these dynamic risks happen, like what's happening today, inflation and unemployment and so forth and so on. Static risks involve those losses that would occur even if there were no changes in the economy, such as the perils of nature and dishonesty of other individuals. Therefore, what we're saying is, when we talk about static, it's not dependent on changes of the economy. And static risks are more suited to treatment of insurance rather than dynamic risks. Okay? Next, there are also fundamental and particular risks. Okay? Ano yun? Fundamental risks involve group risks caused by conditions more or less beyond the control of individuals who suffer the losses. Okay? These risks are the responsibility of society rather than the individual. So yung risk na gagaling from sa kalahatan sa population society, hindi dahil sa tao. Okay? Such as what? Unemployment, occupational disability, and so on and so on. Particular risks involve losses that arise out of individual events and are left by individuals rather than by an entire group. And particular risks are more appropriate for insurance than fundamental risks. Okay? I'm saying this, I'm sharing this, I'm teaching this for us to understand what, in essence, is the role of insurance in our lives and what it can cover and it's also its limitations. Okay? And lastly, there are pure and speculative risks. Pure risks are used to designate those situations that involve only the chance of loss or no loss. Okay? Speculative risk describes situation in which there is a possibility of loss but also a possibility of gain. So, loss or no loss. Okay? That's what you call a pure risk. Pag meron ng speculative yan, like investing, okay? You can lose but you can gain. Then it gets out of the coverage of insurance. Okay? Gambling, for instance, is an example of speculative risk, or investing, or going into business. So only pure risk are generally insurable. Okay? Sige, para maintindihan natin, no? You cannot insure against losses sa casino. Di ba? Pag nalugi ako, I can claim. It does not work that way because it is not a pure risk element. Okay? So, knowing this, we need to begin to understand the elements to determine uninsurable risks. Ano ba ang pwedeng i-cover din? Okay? Number one, the risks of loss must first be definable and measurable. If you cannot define it and if you cannot measure it, then you cannot cover it. Okay? Dapat definable, we know what it is, and then we can measure it. Because we deal with monetary numbers here. May values tayo. Okay? And then later, we're gonna, as this progresses, you'll understand better why it is important to do so. Now, particularly on life insurance, there must be a large enough number of similar exposure units to make potential losses somewhat predictable. This is what you call the law of large numbers. So basically, when we talk about insurance, we're talking about risk pooling and risk sharing. The risk hindi nawawala. Dinidistribute mo lang. Example, let's say, sa atin, okay, 100 tayo. Okay? Sa 100 na to, okay, merong pwedeng mamatay within the next 5 years. Pwede. Not say it will, but pwede, probability. Pero hindi naman lahat tayo. So gagawin natin, i-distribute natin yung risk by pooling. So lahat tayo, maghuhulog tayo sa isang pot. Okay, itong amount na to. Certain amount, pwede makuha ng tao pag siya namatay. So in essence, that's what we call risk pooling. And the law of large numbers is important because this can only be possible that when you're covering a lot of people. Okay, kaya may nung minimum numbers yan. Na para ma-determine mo yung ano niya, yung probability niya of losses. Okay, next. A potential loss must be fortuitous or accidental. In other words, losses cannot be deliberate. It has to be accidental. Hindi pwedeng sinunog mo yung bahay mo para mag-claim ka. That's arson. Diba? Hindi pwedeng binangga mo yung kotse mo tapos kinlay mo. That's fraud. Okay? So, hindi mo pwedeng sinasadya. Fortuitous or accidental. Now, paano yung natural death? Okay, ang coverage doon, hindi naman yung pagkamatay niya, lahat na namatay. It's the untimely death. Okay? So, very important. All losses must be fortuitous, okay, or accidental. Then lastly, the loss must not be catastrophic. Okay? So when we talk about a catastrophic loss, we're talking about the Armageddon type of a loss. Why? There's a limitations of what, there's a limitation to what insurance can do. It cannot cover all of that. Hindi yan sufficient. That's why there's going to be exclusions to see that. It cannot be a catastrophic loss. Alright? Maybe catastrophic to you, but not to society. Alright? So, gumuho yung buong Luzon, ayan, di kaya na insurance yan. Alright? Next. One of the things key important to understand in insurance is that it operates because it follows the law of large numbers. The law of large numbers, or probability of loss, average over a large group of policyholders, allow insurance carriers to predict the chance of loss among their policyholders. First and foremost, with the use of numbers, or what you call actuarial science, those who are computing all of these things, or what you call actuary, can, can appropriate the probability of losses through the use of numbers. And that numbers involves a lot of people. Kaya ang law of large numbers. Right? So in life insurance business, this prediction is made with the help of actuarial tables which use government statistics on life expectancy of the population. So basically, nadidetermine natin, kaya yung mga, like the Philippines, mahal ang insurance. Two reasons: mataas ang mortality compared to, let's say, a more developed nation like Singapore or Japan. And medyo mataas din ang taxes natin. So these are two reasons why when you compare the Philippines, we have a higher uh, premium cost than the others, let's say Hong Kong and Singapore. But maybe when you compare the Philippines to other nations, like from nations in Africa, we might have a cheaper. But again, the tax and the business cost, ano lang po tayo, mute lang. Okay. Sige. So those are the things that are important. Okay. So which yan? Use government statistics on life expectancy population. Though, ito here's a limitation. Although individuals cannot predict the chance of dying at a given age, tayo, we cannot, insurance companies can do so with actuarial tables. So pwedeng at the age of 40, 3 out of 1,000. Can I request people to make sure that you're always on mute? Okay? Kasi medyo madidistract po tayo nito. Alright? Okay. So, that's the case. Although individuals cannot predict the chance of dying at a given age, insurance companies can do so with the use of actuarial tables. So pwedeng 3 out of 1,000 will die at the age of 40. Then we know. We can now do pricing. We can now make certain assumptions. And that's what we call the law of large numbers, right? So, even that. Now, when we talk about insurance, we cannot not talk about perils and hazards. Okay? There's always a peril. Peril is a cause of a loss, and examples of those perils are fire, typhoon, and death. Now, guys, para lang clear tayo, no? I am using principles for both life and non-life, and later on I will make it himay. Para ngayon, para may clarity na tayo, insurance in general. Okay, so peril is a cause of a loss. Examples of perils are fire, typhoon, and death. Hazard, on the other hand, is a condition that may create or increase the chance of a loss arising from a given peril. So pwede yan. So a hazard can be that given peril. It is possible for something to peril na now. Certain hazards that are present to all of us. Number one, there's such a thing as a physical hazard. These are the physical properties that increase the chance of a loss. Example are where your property is located, how it's constructed, or maybe your profession, the kind of work that you do. These are physical hazards. So pwedeng yung bahay mo, di ba, mahirapan ka kuha ng coverage kung yung bahay mo nasa likod na railes ng tren or nasa flood-prone area. Okay? So pwede magkaroon ka ng exclusions kasi may physical hazard yan. Or yung trabaho mo, kaya siya tatanungin natin sa insurance, ano ba yung work mo? Pag medyo alanganan sila, ma-explain sa'yo. You might be in a physically dangerous work or where you are working. Let's say OFWs. I know a lot of people from Israel are complaining. When I went to Israel twice, talked to them, sir, gusto namin pa-insure. Sabi mo pa-insure, pero walang nako-cover sa amin. Because generally speaking, ayaw natin i-cover ang countries na medyo magulo. In Israel, or if they're working for Afghanistan or some countries like that. Okay, so, yan yung why? It's a physical hazard. Okay? Bakit takot sila sa isa? Kita mo, laging may gera, laging ina-attack. So, ayaw ng insurance companies. So, physical properties that increase the chance of loss, like location, construction, profession, and so forth. Next, meron tayong mga moral hazards naman. Moral hazards is dishonest tendencies of an insured in an attempt to defraud an insurance company. Like arson. Di ba? I mean, meron yan. Or meron intent to commit suicide. It's a moral hazard. Kaya meron restriction, di ba? May 2 year. Also, ito common, ang moral hazard, fraudulent claims, which is very common for car insurance. Maraming car insurance, fraudulent claim. Padded, okay? It's bigger than the claim is being bigger than what it really is. That's why yon it's a moral hazard yan. That's why in the insurance industry sa non-life, whenever you submit a claim, ang number one number one reaction nila is fraudulent unless otherwise proven guilty. Kaya medyo mataas ang premium cost kasi maraming mga fraudulent claim, binabantayan nila yan. Alright? Okay. Sige, next. Iba naman, hindi naman sinasadya, which is kapabayaan lang, or carelessness. It is a moral hazard. It's a careless attitude of an insured towards an occurrence of the losses. So, for instance, drunk driving, for instance, okay? Hindi ka naman immoral dahil umiinom ka. Pero may moral issue ka kung magmamaneho ka kasi you're now prone to accidents. So, it's a careless attitude of an insured towards occurrence of losses. Or yung kotse mo, hindi mo dinadaan sa preventive maintenance service, hindi ka nagpe-PMS. Moral hazard yun kasi baka mamaya sira na preno mo. Ano na, kalbo na, gulong mo, sumabog na. So may mga ganong cases. Or hindi ka na nag-iingat. Diba? Laging overspeeding. O kaya, or hindi ka maingat sa sarili mo. Lahat ng bawal ginagawa mo. These are moral hazards. That's why you have to go through some form of underwriting to ascertain whether you are acceptable to them or not. Okay? How are you so far? Are you so bored? Gusto ko lang konti na lang. Kasi parang elementary masyado ba? Masyado bang boring ito tinuturo ko? Okay? Tingnan natin. Alright? Okay, sige. Kasi kung masyado ng elementary, okay? So, tinuturo ko lang. Apparently, and here's the thing, I don't know if you noticed, no? These are things that we should know to begin with. Okay? Kaya, kailangan natin ibalik to. Right? So, now knowing that there is wala na sa licensure exam. Okay. So, oo nga, no? Parang iba na yung mga... Anyway. Okay. Para lang clear tayo. Parang nice lang natin, no? So, because there are risks involved, there's limitation, we do some responses to these risks. Remember, part of what you're doing is being a risk planner. So, there are responses to risks because of the risks that are involved. Right? Now, the most common one is what you call risk retention. Risk retention is perhaps the most common method of handling risks. The retention may be voluntary or involuntary, and as a general rule, risks that should be retained are those that lead to relatively small certain losses. Now, when do we retain this? Kasi hindi mo lahat pwedeng i-pass, hindi mo lahat manage. Ibang risk pwede mong retain. Kasi kung maliit lang naman, di naman malaki ang damage, you will retain certain risk. Risk retention is characterized by low frequency and low severity. Diba? Pag may tindahan ka, tapos paminsan-minsan, di ba, may nababasag. May restaurant ka, may paminsan-minsan, may nababasag na plato, na baso. Okay? Yes, you can reduce that, but generally, you can retain those risks. Kumbaga, na-price in mo yan. Alright? O pilferage, for instance, in stores, priced in yan. They try to minimize it, but these are, kumbaga, sabi nila, part na yan ang negosyo. So, risk retention. Now, there are certain situations wherein we need to practice risk transfer. Risk transfer is the transfer of risk from one individual to another who is more willing to bear the risks. Right? Now, insurance is the most widely used means for deducing risk by transfer. And risk transfer is characterized by low frequency and high severity. So, transfer happens when we now ask somebody to take in the transfer. Okay? If you're willing to, if you pay me, I'll take your risk for you. When do you do that? When do you transfer risks? Transfer of risks should be done when it's characterized by low frequency, paminsan-minsan lang, pero pag tinamaan ka, heavy. Like, nasunugan ka, ninakawan ka. Hindi ka naman nasusunugan every week. Hindi ka naman nananakawan every hour. Okay? Pero pag tinamaan ka niyan, malaki ang damage sa'yo. Lalo naman ang loss of life. Minsan lang yan. Meron ba kayo kilala? Multiple losses of life? Wala naman, di ba? So, minsan lang yan, pero pag tumama yan, ang laki nung financial damage sa mga iiwanan mo. So that means we need to transfer because that risk is so great, it's so severe, and we cannot take it, we cannot retain it, and sometimes you cannot avoid it. That's why we transfer it. Alright? Okay? Gets natin? Okay. Next, control. Sometimes we need to practice risk control. Risk control, we find ways to minimize losses. Okay, some of them we avoid, some of them we reduce, some of them meron tayong some form of a financing scheme, or maybe you can, some companies do this, no? They have a pool, and that money, doon nila kukunin yung pera, they anticipate that there's gonna be cost, okay, they do that. So iba-iba yung ginagawa nila. They do transfers, they do retentions, but there's some form of a way to control the risks. So risk management, in other words. Now, sometimes you have to reduce the risk where you have to apply risk reduction strategies. Risk reduction is achieved through loss prevention and control, such as safety programs that are put in place like medical care, sprinkler systems, security guards, burglar alarms, etc. And risk reduction is characterized by high frequency, although low severity, madalas. So damaging din yun. So we have to find ways to reduce it. Now, especially now with the COVID and everything, you know that many companies are now putting ways to reduce this by maybe increasing filtration alam mo yun, uh, more medical care and stuff like that because we don't want to be affected by this kind of risks. So, re-reduce mo yung risk mo. Di ba? I had as an example, I was an employee for a company. I remember, siguro a few weeks in my house in my table, one day I saw in my table 60 tablets of vitamins. Di ko makalimutan yung vitamins. Yung vitamins, Besidin. May Besidin pa mga yun. So, vitamins, nilagay dyan, 60 tablets. Sabi ko, I was asking my colleagues, ano to? Kasi I was a new employee. Ano to? Bakit merong vitamins sa table ko? Sino nakaiwan? Natawa. Atin yan. Every 60 days, HR sends us multivitamins. So sabi ko, wow, how generous, di ba? Because I've never worked for any company that will physically give me vitamins and put it in my table. Okay. Then I was talking to, I think I was talking to HR. Sabi ko, uy, generous naman, meron pa kaming vitamins. Sabi nila mo, Randall, yes, it's generous, but also it's risk prevention. We notice that when we give vitamins to our employees, they are less sickly. When they are less sickly, they have low levels of absences, and they're and they will result to better productivity. Ganun ba yun? So, the cost of providing vitamins, we get a better return by getting eventually higher productivity because mas lesser daw yung mga absences and getting sick. Oh, sabi ko, I realized that that company was practicing risk reduction. Later on, I found out when I was studying more about insurance. Of course, that company was an insurance company. Okay? This was 1997. Okay? Siguro ito, kakapanganak lang ng 1997. Alright, so, kasi normal, nakalig na ako, nagbibigay ng bigas, nagbibigay ng gano'n. Pero nagbigay ng multivitamin 60. So every 60 days, I get that vitamins. Alright. I kind of realize some employees were kung ano ba naman klaseng vitamins to, blah, blah, blah. So, alam mo, may magandang hindi nila na-appreciate. Okay. Sometimes, there are certain risks wherein we need to avoid. Okay. It's what you call risk avoidance. Risk avoidance occurs when an individual refuses to accept the risk even for an instant. Okay? This means this is accompanied by merely not engaging in the action that gives rise to the risk. So parang hindi na natin hindi na natin papasukan yung risk. Okay? Sandali bumagsak ang aking risk reduction. May bumagsak sa gilid ko. Sorry. Nagulat ako, may bumagsak sa... Buti hindi nyo nakita. Okay. Buti hindi ako bumagsak. Okay. Avoidance. Alright. So, avoidance is a method. It's a medyo negative to, no? Because you don't do that, so you don't get any gain. Example, ayoko malugi, hindi na ako mag-i-invest. O, di ba? Parang, okay, hindi ka nga nalugi, hindi ka naman kumita. Or, ayoko masaktan, hindi na ako magmamahal. O, di ba? Mga ganyang hugot. O, di ba? Single ka forever. O, di ba? Pero God loves you. Okay? Belated happy birthday to happy Valentine's to the singles. Alright, joke lang. So, risk avoidance is characterized. Pero minsan, kailangan mo gawin yan. When do you do that? When the risk is characterized by high frequency and high severity. Okay? Malaki yung impact, madalas pa. So, sometimes, it's better for you to avoid. Like, I was talking to somebody and I was doing counseling sa kanya. As in a span of 15 years, lahat ng pinasok na negosyo, lugi, talo. As in, sunod na sunod siya, baon na baon siya sa utang. Sa kanya, bro, huwag ka na muna magnegosyo. Clearly, hindi yan para sa iyo. Because lumalala lang yung situation mo. Buti nakinig siya. And eventually, he was really built for the corporate environment and he's doing well now. Okay? May mga ganun eh. Minsan, don't believe, dapat negosyo lang. May mga tao hindi para doon talaga. So, risk avoidance, I told him not to stop doing business. Sorry. I was muted the whole time. Tama ba yun? Ako, nakamute pala ako. Sayang yung mga pinagsasabi ko. Okay, risk avoidance. Okay, happens when hindi na lang siya papasok sa negosyo. Okay, this will happen when the risks is characterized by high frequency of high severity. Sobrang talas, di ba? Sobrang laki ng damage. Like what I was talking, the guy I was counseling for the last 10-15 years, lahat ng pinasok sa negosyo, lugi siya. So my advice to him, huwag ka na pumasok sa negosyo. And eventually, he became a good corporate employee, no? I mean, high level. Kasi hindi talaga yun para sa kanya. So sometimes, you need to avoid risks also. Alright? Okay. So I was muted the whole time. Okay. Next. When we deal with this, we need to deal with mortalities and morbidity. Okay? So very important. And now we're talking about insurance, life insurance in general. So mortality is the rate at which a population dies. Since we're dealing with probabilities, we need to identify ano yung mortality rate ng particular bayan na kinukover natin, like the Philippines. Ano ba yung mortality rate niya? So, pag mataas ang mortality, mataas ang insurance. Morbidity naman deals with the likelihood of disability. Of course, we check on both mortality and morbidity. Right? Mortality and morbidity are very important to insurance companies and applicable to a group, but not really useful when applied to individuals. Kasi we're dealing with probabilities and numbers. Although we know that 3 out of 1,000 will die at the age of 40, we do not know which 3 of them. Okay? So yan yung case niya. So it's really used for a group. It cannot, well, there's no use for individuals, no? And, very important, in insurance, there's what you call adverse selection or anti-selection. Okay? To avoid adverse selection, anti-selection, companies evaluate applications for insurance, also known the process called underwriting. They need to underwrite. They need to assess whether that risk is acceptable to them or not. So basically, companies will have to ascertain, merong certain na risk that acceptable to them. Kasi sa insurance companies, parang may box yan. Dito lang kami pwede. Okay? So pag lumampas dito, hindi namin, either number one, kunyari ito yung risk, ito lang yung acceptable, ito lang yung box na pwede kami. Weight, height, profession, medical condition, nandito lang yan. Pag lumampas ka dun sa box na yun, let's say, up to hanggang 5'9", hanggang 200 pounds lang. Pag lumampas siya 200 pounds na, hindi na yan pwede. So, iba-ibang company, iba-iba yung limits nila, iba-iba yung requirements nila. But generally speaking, they follow a certain standard. So, pag lumampas ka doon, sa box na yon, sa acceptable sa kanila, kasi ang role ng underwriting is to protect the profitability of the insurance company. Kasi when they allow, these things to come in, okay, kahit na sayang yung premium, they will eventually increase the claims experience, and that will affect, okay, the bottom line of the company, which will affect everybody. Okay? Kasi, kumbaga yan, in a way, predictable kung ano yung probability na loss natin. Okay? So, kaya kayo, huwag kayong sasama ng loob pag hindi natatanggap yung mga ina-apply nyo, because they are practicing what they are trained to do by safeguarding the profitability of the company. Okay? That's why it's called underwriting. Okay? That's one, ano? So, pwede nila tanggapin, pero either magbayad ka ng more premium, tawag natin yan, rated, so pwedeng A, B, C, D, E, F. So the farther you are from the box, the more you have to pay. Example, ako, okay, meron po akong insurance, okay, yung insurance ko, rated na po ako, okay. Meron ako mga insurance na hindi ako rated, yung mga earlier years, and then now, rated na ako. Bye. Siguro naman, di ba? Mukha naman akong overweight talaga, no? Di ba? Parang ganyan, no? Ang problema sa status ko, hindi na ako pwede magsinungaling kasi kilala ko ng mga underwriter, no? Okay. Hindi na, pag may nagsabit ng policy, binentahan nyo ng policy, sinabi ko, height 5'9", weight 170. O, walang maniniwala sa inyo. Okay. Baka matagal lang pa kayo na lisensya. Okay. So, ako rated ako. Okay. Ako, tinanggap ko yan kasi alam ko, I'm outside the box. So, I'm willing to pay more for the coverage. So, sometimes, hindi ka nila tatanggapin. So, sometimes they can say, postpone. Okay. May situation, may nakita kaming condition tong client mo. Pwede namin tanggapin, reapply mo 6 months from now or 1 year from now. Postponement yan. So, okay na rin. Diba? At least willing consider. And yung isa, pag sobra ng layo talaga doon sa box, decline na to. Okay? Now, minsan, bakit Randall? May ibang company tinatanggap, iba dinidecline. Generally speaking, what is declinable in company A would be declinable in company B, company C. But sometimes, baka yung situation mo na sa borderline lang. Okay? Because some companies have a wider threshold. Generally speaking, newer companies would be a little bit more strict because maybe hindi nila naiintindihan yung di pa nila nakukuha enough experience sa claims nila. Older companies, because they, may mga situation na kami, tinanggap namin to, okay pa rin naman yung claim, so they can be a little bit more lenient. Or sometimes, newer companies, how do I say it without sounding, minsan naman, pumapayag ang underwriting kasi merong pressure to increase premium base. Pero, they can only give a little bit of latitude, hindi all the way out. So, it's a business call for companies to do that. Alright? Now, anti-selection sometimes happens when this is a practice, no, in group insurance, everything. Example, nagbebenta ka ng policy sa cancer patients ng St. Luke's. O, diba? Sigurado ko AMDRT ka dyan. Okay? Pero lahat ng pasok mo galing doon, hindi papasukan ng kliyente. Bakit? Takas ng risk doon eh. Or kaya, nagpa-insure ka, group insurance. O sige, group insurance. Okay, sabi ng kampanya, I have 300 employees, 50 of which are delivery, drivers, riders. Sabi ng HR, cover mo lang yung 50 na riders, yung 250 hindi, yung office-based. Aba, hindi papayag sa insurance company. Bakit? Diba lahat ng risk niliyaw mo sa akin, tapos yung save, hindi namin ko cover. Lugi kami dyan. So, yan. Yan naman yung goal ng underwriting. Alright? So, mahaba pa yung underwriting, no? And hindi naman ako underwriter, no? Pero again, that's group insurance for cancer. Okay? Sigurado. Okay. Yan. Paano pag under the knife na, like CS? CS, tinatanggap naman ng CS kasi temporary lang naman yung gagaling naman yun eh. Cancer, iba yun. Pag cancer, iba yun. Depende na yan. Situation. Minsan, mahirap na lang itawid yan. Tapos, di ba, uso pa ngayon yung mga health benefits, no? So, hihigpit talaga. Kasi risk management yan eh. Mortality, morbidity. Alright? Guys, are you guys okay? So, later on, let's try to have more Q&A, no? So far. Okay, am I boring you to death? Okay? Mas mataas ang premium? Usually, pag mula ka na dun sa box na sinasabi natin, acceptable box, talagang tataas ang premium mo. Or, pwede na i-decline, or pwede na i-postpone. Okay? So, because you're selling insurance, you are now, all of these are covered by a contract, or what you call an insurance contract. Right? An insurance contract is an agreement whereby one undertakes for a consideration to indemnify. When you read the word indemnify, it means pay somebody against loss, damage, or liability arising, again, that word, unknown or contingent event. So in other words, hindi pwedeng sinasadya. Okay? This is a fortuitous, accidental. Okay? Paano ba yung life? Hindi naman accidental na kasakit. Yung accident, yung fortuitous doon is the untimely death. Kasi hindi mo natin napipredict kailan magkakasakit ng tao. Okay? So an agreement whereby one undertakes to be paid against loss, damage, or liability arising from an unknown or contingent event. That's the basically. And lahat ng contracts, whether it's from Sunlight, Finlike, Manulife, AXA, Insular, FWD, Allianz, Pioneer, BDO Life, nabanggit ko ba lahat? Meron ba ako naiwan? Ha? Para lang safe tayo. Okay. Sa Arundel, di mo binanggit. Nabanggit ko ba lahat? Pro-Life. Sinabi ko Pro-Life. Di ba? Pro-Life. Prudential. Coco Life. O, sige. Coco Life. Ano pa? Sige. Film Life. Sorry, nakalimutan ko Film Life. May event pa naman ako bukas. AXA. O, in-house daw ng Cebuana Luwilier. I think they're outsourced. Sangrepa. O, Sunlight na rin naman yun. Okay, ano pa? Kaiser. Kaiser is health eh. Manila Bankers. Yes, I forgot Manila Bankers. FWD. O, yan. FWD. Okay? Ayan. Lahat yan, binanggit na. Okay. So, sige. PLIA, Philippine Life Insurance Association. Para walang problema. Okay. Herbalife. Labo. Okay. Okay. So, lahat ng insurance, whether binili mo kay Pro, kay San, kay Pilam, kay Insular, kay Manyo, kay AXA, kay FWD, kay Coco, kay whatever. Okay. Lahat yan, generally speaking, iba-iba kulay, iba-iba font, maybe iba-iba yung order, pero lahat ito covering nito. All contracts are contracts of consideration. They are of utmost good faith. They're contracts of adhesion. They are personal in nature. They're unilateral, and again, they're aleatory. Okay? So, para lang maintindihan natin a little bit further. So, first and foremost, consideration. Okay? Or payment. Also known as premium. Okay? Premium is what is paid in exchange for the protection. And your premium are distributed or what you call allocated. Okay? The allocations is merong OPEX, merong allocation for claims or reserves, may allocations pang bayad and distribution or commissions, and then whatever's left is investment or invested. Okay? So, yung VUL, meron din component yan na non-allocated, which is for investment. But basically, technically, premiums are distributed this way. So, companies will now need to manage their OPEX. The Insurance Commission is very strict about their reserves. Okay? Yung claims, yung nilalagay mo for claims, allocation mo for claims, binabantayan na yan. In fact, the Insurance Commission will measure companies, and sometimes they will ask the company to raise capital because feeling nila hindi na sufficiente pang claims, di ba? Pang claims mo. Okay? So that's how they do it. Pag hindi, they will declare you as insolvent. Okay? And they will ask you to stop selling until you do that. Now, I don't know if you've heard about this. Before, there was a quasi-insurance industry called the pre-need. They're still here today. The pre-need operates, smells like insurance, feels like insurance. People cannot determine the difference, but they are not under the Insurance Commission back then. They were under the Securities and Exchange Commission. They were considered more of a security rather than an insurance. And they do not follow these things. Okay? Kaya nga, maraming pumutok na pre-need companies, hindi nakapagbayad. Okay, nadamay pa yung insurance industry kahit na wala silang hindi sila part na nun. So, kaya maraming nasunog, NSCAP, Prudential Cap, Pacific, Platinum, professional plans, di ba? Yung isang may-ari ng professional plans, di ba? Active pa naman siya ngayon, magturo ng finance, di ba? Tanong niyo kung sino, kilala niyo yun. Secret, anyway. Operational expenses, claims, commissions, and everything. Nung nilipat sila sa insurance industry, inassess sila ng, syempre, dahil under insurance commission sila, sabi ng insurance company, we have to treat you like insurance company. Most of them, tinamaan dito sa claims. Okay, kasi ang ginagamit nila, meron daw silang trust fund. Yung problema ng trust fund nila, okay, yung trust fund nila, hindi enough para doon sa claims nila. And, yung iba, nauutang pa nila yung mga trust fund nila. Okay, so pwedeng naka-back to back. Tapos yung investments nila, yung ba nakita na ba ito? Puro property, dito liquid. Kasi sa insurance commission, lalo na yung mga old school investment, or sa old school policies, puro government securities lang ang gusto. So kaya nangyari doon, kaya nga, insurance product versus printed product, mas lamang yung printed products. Yung educational fund nila as against an endowment education, mas profitable. Sa totoo lang, mas maganda yung yung printed. Kaso, hindi siya dumaan dun sa, kaya nga maraming sumago. Kaya most of them, I think, naiiwan na lang ngayon ay yung mga, yung mga merong mga funeral, no? Lately, even si may problema na. Si Phil Plans, na dating Phil Plans, na binenta. So ngayon, may mga ganung issues na rin sila. Okay? Nag-o-offer na sa, will pay you, pero will pay you less. Mga ganun. So, yan yung problema. Kasi, hindi nabantayan ito. Alright? Next, all contracts, whether it's an insurance contract or any contract, assume that there is utmost good faith. Now, sa insurance, dapat there is absence of fraud or deceit. And the insured has the obligation to disclose material facts. Because material facts will ascertain or determine whether a person is insurable or not. Okay, yun yung phrase. Information that will determine, okay, si PhilHealth ay pre-need. Okay? Si PhilHealth hindi. Si PhilHealth technically, it's an insurance, pero government, okay. So, okay. Yan. Okay. Okay. Government scam. Ayun naman. Okay. Sige. Absence of fraud or deceit, and insured has the obligation to disclose material facts. Now, the absence, material fact meaning to say that it affects whether or not we can insure a person or not. Now, the absence of disclosures, okay, will now lead to concealment and misrepresentation. What is the problem of concealment and misrepresentation? It will affect your claims. Okay, so pag hindi kinonceal ka, hindi ka may misrepresent ka, at lumabas yun, they can now legally deny your claim. Now, remember sa insurance, meron tayong 2-year contestability period. Okay, hindi ko na dinaanan yung mga contestability period. Pero may contestability period yun. Any claim after 2 years is not contestable anymore. But, ito very clear, it does not cover non-contestability, does not cover concealment and grave misrepresentation. Okay? So there have been cases where a claim was denied even beyond the 2-year contestability period because it was proven beyond doubt that there was grave concealment and grave misrepresentation. Now again, this is subject to litigation, what is grave or not. Example, sinabi ko 180 pounds lang ako. Pero in reality, 190 pounds ako. Okay, now question is, may concealment? Yes. Did I misrepresent? Yes. Is it grave? Will it affect contestability, insurability? Probably not. So yun, hindi yan grave, hindi yan concealment. Okay? Okay, so yan yung situation. Very clear na tayo dyan. Okay, yung mga question nyo mamaya pag-usapan natin. Okay? So, sabi nila Ilani, what if may cancer history ang client 10 years ago but currently clear naman? Do they need to declare it? Yes. They need to declare it. It's now up to the insurance commission and so insurance underwriting it. Kasi kung minsan naman pag nakatagal, pinapayagan na yan. Humihingi lang yan ng mga reports. Pero basically, kasi grave yan. Di ba? Material information yan. So hindi mo pwedeng idaan yan. Okay? Paano yung dati, nakalagnat, nung 2 years old, 13 na siya. Grave pa ba? Hindi naman ano yun. Hindi naman yun na clear. Okay? So, what needs to be discussed? So again, that's very important. So, marami kasi masyadong, I remember one of my trainings in the past, dinidebate ako dito, hindi, basta nakatuyo siya, lusot yan. Hindi po totoo yun. Buti ang mga advisors ngayon, mababait na, mga compliant na. Di na nila sinasabi yun. 10, 15 years ago, in the trainings that I do 20 years ago, people will debate with me. Debate till death. I remember, I won't say which company, where I was talking to them about concealment and misrepresentation, and they were adamant. These are mga old school advisors. Adamant, hindi, lusot yan, until there was a participant there who is now an advisor but used to be in claims. Sabi niya, hindi po totoo yan. Nag-deny na po tayo. Hindi madalas, pero may mga na-deny na po tayong claim because of that. Alright? Okay, yung pre-read, di ko na mamaya na natin tanongin yung mga pre-read nyo na yan. Okay? Totoo, I remember an agent saying not to this. Subong mo na lang sa compliance. Anyway, so, okay. Maganda ng question ni Angelica. How about po, nung kumuha siya ng insurance, non-smoker siya, but a year after, smoker siya, hindi problema yan because ang declaration mo is upon application. Parang, nag-apply ako, wala akong sakit. Tapos nagka-cancel ako next year or next month. Pasok yun kasi wala naman akong Hindi naman upon your statement of condition of health and everything is upon your application. Okay? At the point of application. So technically, bukas, nagsigarilyo siya. Okay, huwag naman bukas. But usually, ganun nga nangyayari. Okay? So, situation. Minsan naman, smoker, iba rate. 1 year after, 2 years after, you can actually ask them to consider changing the premium. Kasi non-smoker na. May mga ganun situation. Pero pabaliktad, hindi. Okay. Adhesion. All insurance contract, paano po kapag hindi nag-declare ng previous agent na cancer survivor si client, approve po ang policy, the client still paying the policy. May risk yan. Yan yung problema natin. May risk yan. Okay? So, ibig sabihin nito, pwedeng hindi siya mabayaran. Now, honestly marami naman, minsan naman lumulusot. Hindi naman marami. May lumulusot na kasi minsan di naman nakikita na yung records, no? Minsan sobrang tagal na. So, pero mayroong risk lagi sa claims. Okay? So, yan yung problema. So, the advisor needs to be held liable for kasi compliance. Kaya nga, yung mga companies ngayon, may mga compliance, no? Kasi nga, tinitingnan nila yan kasi hindi niya ginawa ito. Okay? Anyway. OFW po ako pero may company dito na sa Milan ang pirmahan ng policy tapos papadala sa Pilipinas international law na po bawal yon. Okay? Hindi yan problema yan sa claims. Pwedeng ma-issue policy may lumusot kasi yan may fraud na yan. So hanggang ngayon hindi pa nababago yung rule. Okay? I don't know about the digital later on yung mga ganon. So that might change kasi nga pero basically sir may eyeglass ka wrinkles mo, mahal, pero I don't get it. Okay. Ako ba yun? Okay, hindi ko mahanap sa salamin ko binaba ko yata Anyway, so, yan yung situation. Okay? That's it. Para sa akin pala yun. Thank you, Jonathan. Alam ko yung sinasabi mo Okay lang yan. Tama naman maka-wrinkles ako. 50 plus na ako. Okay. So, adhesion. The insured has prepared and established the conditions in the policy. That's one. Okay? So again, kaya nga, kahit anong brand lahat yan, pre-approved by the insurance commission yan. Na ialalatag sa'yo, as an insured, you have to adhere to it. In other words, take it or leave it. Pag ayaw mo, huwag mo kunin yung policy. reject mo. Pag kinuha mo yung policy, you need to adhere to the conditions of the policy. It's a contract of adhesion. So it's a take it or leave it policy. Hindi mo pwede sabihin, ay ayoko itong provision to, palitan. Hindi pwede yun. I've had a case one time, a lawyer told me that meron siya pinapabago sa contract. Then I brought it, I was a very young advisor. Pinadala ko sa siyempre tinignan ng legal. Sabi ng legal sa akin, you tell, siyempre, mga pilosopo, you tell your client to go back to law school, di ba? Contract of adhesion to. Siyempre, hindi ko naman nasabi, I have to do it in a different way. Pero, yan kasi nga, hindi mo nababago yan. There are very limited things you can change in a contract because it's a contract of adhesion. Now, all contracts, whether life or non-life, are contracts that are personal in nature. The policy attaches to the assured and not to the property. Example, bumili ako ng kotse. Binenta ko kay, ano tayo ng pangalan dito? Okay, kotse, binenta ko kay Cynthia Caballes. Cynthia. So, Cynthia, bumili ako kotse. Inads ko. So, yung Fortuner ko, binili ni Cynthia. Sabi ko kay Cynthia, may kasama pang ano yan, may kasama pang car insurance yan. Meron pang ano yan, good for the next 5 months. Yun na. Sa'yo na yan. Okay. Hindi ko nilipat yung pangalan. Hindi pinroses si Cynthia, inassume niya as it is. Nabagga ngayon si Cynthia. Hindi ngayon siya makakaklip. Bakit? Okay? Hindi naman nakapangalan sa kanyang insurance. Kahit na naka-insure yung kotse, ang risk, ang rational dito, mga kapatid, is because ang risk ay nasa gumagamit, nasa may-ari, hindi sa kotse. A car in itself cannot be in an accident. It is the driver's fault. Bakit nakarnap siya? Kasi doon mo siya pinan. May mga ganun situation. So, ang risk nito nasa tao. Kaya nga, very important. Hindi porke tinanggap ko si Randall sa insurance, automatically tatanggap ko si Cynthia sa insurance. Bakit? Pwedeng sa amin, si Cynthia, 4 na ang bangga niya in 2 weeks. O di ba, 2 weeks, 4 ang bangga. Pwede ba yun? Huwag ka na mag-drive. Okay? Joke lang ha, hindi yung ganun si Cynthia. So, basically, ganun yung situation. So, yung risk assessment niya. Now, pwede mo naman i-transfer yan, pero kailangan yan ng may endorsement, which is it's written and approved by the insurance company para lumipat. Kasi nga, ang contracts are personal in nature. Okay? Next, contracts are unilateral in nature. Mean to say, the obligation of the insurer is not necessarily due immediately. Kailangan may mangyari bago magbayad. The insurer has to perform in the future after the insured has paid his premium. Tama? So, hindi ka pwedeng babayaran kung hindi paid ang premium mo. Minsan kasi nakapag-issue ng policy, hindi pa paid, pero hindi makaka-claim hanggang di nagbayad. Pero nasunod yung conditions on the contract. Hindi mo binago. Because unilateral in nature yan. Okay? Then, insurance contracts are aleatory in nature. When I say aleatory, it means that the obligation of the insurer to perform is dependent upon the occurrence of an event insured against. Pag hindi nangyari yun, walang bayad yun. Okay? Now, life insurance has a different context, but basically, yung certain provisions nun. Example, term insurance. Natapos na yun, wala kang bayad. Okay? Kailangan magbayad ulit. Or travel insurance, or accident insurance, or fire insurance. Lahat ng form, aleatory in nature. And if the event does not occur, the insurer will not pay anything. Okay? So next year ulit. Na nangyari, bayaran. Bayaran ka hanggat di ka na mamatay. Kung namatay ka, doon ka na mabayaran. Paano yung cash value? That's a different agreement. Alright? Now, okay pa ba kayo? Anong oras na ba? Okay, ito kami. So, discuss ko lang ito insurable interest and then we'll go on a break. Okay? Lahat ng contracts, whether life or non-life, requirement dito is an insurable interest. Okay? So, an insurable interest happens, so look at the provisions, no? An insurable interest happens when there is a relationship in which, number one, the insured derives benefit from the preservation of the subject, and two, he will suffer a financial loss if the subject is destroyed or damaged. Meron kang financial losses. So number one, nagbe-benefit ka. Okay, basta mag-asawa. Okay, does the husband and the wife, do they benefit from each other while isa nabubuhay? Of course. Sabi nga ng wife ko, Randall, what is yours is mine, and what is mine is mine. O, di ba? Laking benefit. Okay? Pag may nangyari ako, which you suffer a loss, well, minimize kasi of my insurances. Right? Right? But basically, may loss pa din yan. So, they will suffer yan. That's why parents, parents and children, spouses, automatically assume that there is an insurable interest. Anything beyond that, you have to identify A and B. May benefit ba? Or mag-suffer ba ng damage? Okay. Example, in-invest, nagpa-insure ka. Ni-name mong beneficiary, pinsan mo. Okay. Yung pinsan mo, hindi automatic yan. Magtatanong ngayon yung underwriter. Bakit? Bakit pinsan yung underwriter? Sabi ba bakit pinsan? Explain ngayon sa agent's report mo. Explain mo ngayon because apparently, younger cousin, pinapaaral ni kuya. So, parang kinukup na niya in a way. O, totoo may benefit. Pag may nangyayari dito sa older kuya niya, cousin niya, magka-suffer, baka hindi makatapos sa pag-aaral niya. Then, may insurable interest na yan. And then, automatic, you need to explain. Mag-boyfriend, mag-girlfriend, pwede ba yan? Depende. Okay, do they derive a benefit from each other? May malamang nagde-negosyo na, pwede, oo. Pag may nangyari, pwede. Depende. And sometimes, insurance underwriters will not question, teka, mag-aasawa yan. Ginagawa nila yon. Technically, there is no bar, there's no legality that prevents them from approving that, but they're doing that from an underwriting perspective to avoid frauds and mga ganyan. Kaya tatang na may intent to marry ba yan, kaya may kaksal yan. So, yan, di ba? Yan yung mga, kaya nga, yan yung case. And lately, the Insurance Commission came up with their statement that LGBT relationships can now be covered. Kasi, dati, hindi yan tatanggapin. Kasi, di ba, certain rules and law, the Insurance Commission cited this provision in insurance about insurable interest. Basta may insurable interest. Hindi yan automatic, basta may insurable interest that you need to prove. Alright, now, paano naman yung kabit, third party? So, technically, yung kabit, third party, extramarital affair, sa mga pag ganun kabit, mapagmahal na lalaki, okay, does the third party, okay, do they derive a benefit from the preservation? Oo naman. Okay? Okay, so yan yung mga situation. So, I don't know. Diba, mga ganyan. So, pwede. Pag may nangyayari ito kay Papa, paano na yun? Eh, syempre, baka hindi na makapag-aral.
Siguro kahit sabihin ko, nakadahas speaking.
Okay. So again, pwede. Pero, meron din law na nagbabawal. Diba? Sa batas natin, bawal yung ganon. Kaya hindi natin i-allow ang if you're married, you cannot put your common law wife. If you're married. If you're not married, pwede. But if you're married, bawal na yan. Okay? So, bawal na yan. Paano kung may anak? Okay? Eh, di ba? Anak yan sa labas. Hindi yan, legitimate child. The law does not, I don't know what you call it, prevent. Okay? Basta anak, walang prevention on these things. Kasi nga, hindi na makasalanan ng bata na illegitimate siya. Alright? Sabi ko nga, there are no such thing as illegitimate children, only illegitimate parents. Anyway, joke lang. Pero yung situation, anak pwede. Okay? Dahil yung anak, hindi naman pwedeng tumanggap ng pera, pwedeng ma-name yung mami niya, nakabit, okay? The law does not distinguish, okay? Na pwedeng siyang tumanggap ng proceeds of insurance in behalf of the child kasi siya ang mother. So, paano yun? Binayaran mo rin yung kabit? Hindi, binayaran yung bata, kaya may mga bonds pa yan to make sure na hindi nagagamitin yung pera para sa bata. So, basically, sa non-life, may insurable interest din yan. Okay? Sa non-life. So, hindi mo pwede insure yung kotse inuupahan mo, nag-rent-a-car ka. Okay? Hindi mo pwede insure yan na pag may nabangga, ikaw babayaran. Bakit hindi ikaw may-ari? Yung inuupahan mong bahay, hindi mo pwede insure yan. Kasi pag nasunog yan, hindi naman iyo yan. Ang nagpapa-insure niyan, yung may-ari. Ang pwede mo insure yan, yung contents. Okay? Kasi yung contents pwedeng sa'yo. But basically, yan yung insurable interest. Alright? So, at this point in time, we're gonna go on a quick break and we'll be back in 5 minutes. Do whatever you need to understand. Leasehold improvement, contents. You can do that. Then, yan yung mga situations na pwede natin gawin. Alright? So, I'll see you in a while. So, resume recording. If no other questions, walang asawa, walang problema. Diba? Wala namang asawa eh. Okay, so pwede yan. Diba? Okay. Mag-asawa na kayo, para walang problema. Diba? Mga situation. Iba na nga ngayon, di ba? Ayaw na mag-asawa, di ba? Ano nga yun? No labels. Mga ganyan. No labels. No legal document, wala naman. It's just a declaration. Remember, it is utmost good faith ang contract. So, wala namang kailangan ipakita. Minsan, pwede sa mga business partners, business owner, may mga pecuniary interest, may utang, yan hihingi yan. May PN, may ganyan. Hihingi ng underwriting yan just to prove. But they're not technically legal documents, but we just have to show proof to do that. Now, minsan, meron akong case, meron akong, nung nagbebenta ako ng insurance decades ago, meron ako meron siyang matandang dalaga siya at meron siyang alaga na, eventually, pinalaki niya. So, ayan yung situation. Okay. Yung gusto niyang beneficiary, yung alaga niya. So ako, at that time, I was young, I didn't know, but I went to the underwriter and I asked them. Sabi nila, basta mapuprove mo na may insurable interest, pwede naman. Kasi yan. So, pumayag yung company, dineclare naman siya as ward, in-explain ko lang ano yung relationship, kung nakatira siya dito, kinupkup na siya, hindi naman siya legally adopted. Ginawa siyang beneficiary. So, pwede. Okay? Kasi insurable interest rules. Jerry asked me, trans woman sa Randall, pwede mo kung bao naman, ba't naman hindi? Diba? So, syempre, meron mga, sa underwriter will ask some commercial questions, pero hindi naman Pero syempre, yung sa atin, kasi diba, you still follow your birth at right. So, hindi niya pwede declare na women siya. Kasi male pa rin siya. Tama, generally, male pa rin siya. As far as we're concerned. Kasi sa other countries, hindi na, clear pa yung Philippine laws natin. Okay? Hindi natin siya, kung health-wise and everything, we need to declare, unless merong complications, Pero ang gender niya was gender at birth tayo. Okay? Kasi nag-iba na name niya talaga sa birth niya. Kung legal na yung birth niya, kasi di ba, I'm not a lawyer, but you cannot change your gender sa Philippines. Not yet. You can change your name legally, pwedeng legal babae, pero, hindi ka pwede mag-change ng gender sa Pilipinas. Okay. Alright, clear tayo, Jerry? So, okay. Pwede ka nagpalit sa abroad, pero syempre, follow natin yung legally, pwede ka magpalit ng pangalan. Pwede mo gawin pangalan mo babae. Pero yung gender mo pa rin at birth. Okay? Yan yung situation natin. Yun, tama. Gender at birth. Now, as to how long I don't know. I don't know. With the sogi and everything, I don't know. I hope not, but again, yan lang. Yan, reasonable doubt. Maraming situation. Okay! So, gumugulo na. Okay? Ang risks na sa sex at birth. I don't know. I don't get that. Anyway. So, ano naman yung mga klaseng insurance? Mark, what happens if you miss a monthly premium or late? Lapse. Pag may policy, may pera pa yung policy mo, premium holiday, okay, cash advance, pero pag wala na yan. Okay. So, kaya nga don't miss it. Pag luma na yung policy mo, marami na cash values niya, marami na investment values niya, hindi yan mag-lapse, mag-a-advance yung fund mo. Pag wala, ay di mag-lapse ang policy mo. Yun yung downside ng mga term, pwedeng mawala. Pero tama, may 30 days grace period, may 60 days grace period. There are companies that usually, some of them actually use 60 days. Pero yung legal is 30 days grace period. Okay? So, next situation, anong klase mga insurance meron? So, there are many, but I'm just gonna go to the two kinds, life and non-life. Okay? So, health is technically part of life. Okay? Ang gulo nga, no? Kasi HMO nga dati, hindi under insurance yan, ano? So, it's basically life and then non-life. So, yung non-life, yung property, liability, accident, and so forth and so on. So, let's talk about life insurance first. I know, quickly lang to kasi it's super boring review para sa inyo. So, life insurance is a unique contract which for a stipulated consideration called the premium, ini-insure niya ang life of a particular person called the assured. Upon the assured's death, the insurance company agrees to pay a stated sum of money to the named beneficiary. So, very clear tayo. So, insurance contract siya na may payment, na babayaran ng premium. May in-insure na tao, okay? Okay, may taong insured, okay, called the assured. Tapos, pag may namatay siya, the company pays a stated sum, a face amount, to a named beneficiary. So, dapat name yung beneficiary. A named beneficiary means it goes to the estate. The unnamed beneficiary is always to the estate of the assured. But I think the whole purpose of insurance is you want to transfer it to a particular person. But some people don't name it, so it goes to the estate. So, yan yung life insurance. Now, certain uniqueness of life insurance. No? Number one, it is not the possibility of death that is insured, but rather an untimely death. So, pwede yung argument, oh, di ba, dapat ano, hindi naman. Ang contingent dito, okay, is that untimely yung death. Okay? So, kung old age, the old age. Pero kung bigla namatay, untimely death. Okay? Now, life insurance is not a contract of indemnity. Later, I'll explain. Indemnity means, babayaran kita, put you in the same financial position as before the loss. Sa insurance, sa life insurance, we just ascertain. We just use some form of estimation kung ano yung value because you cannot really determine the value of a person. Diba? You can use assets, you can use income, but doesn't mean that that's the value of a person. So it cannot use it as a contract indemnity. Now, that's the downside. That's the good side about insurance. Then, as mentioned earlier, the insurable interest must exist at the onset of the contract. So, umpisa pa ng contract, na-ascertain mo na yung insurable interest. So, Randall, paano pag nagbago yung insurable interest? Okay, kasi natin sa insurance, at the onset naman. Kaya nga yung asawa mo, naghiwalay kayo. Diba? Asawa mo, may policy. Siya ang beneficiary ko. Diba? Tapos na-annul kami. Okay? Tapos nag-remarry ako. Which, guys, ano lang to, analogy to. Hindi po ako magre-remarry at hindi po ako biyudo. Okay? So, nag-remarry ako. Na-annul ako. Nag-remarry ako. Okay? Nawalang visa na ba yung insurable interest ko sa una kong wife? Hindi. Kasi una-una at onset. Tsaka, kaya nga, di ba, yun ang downside sa annulment eh. Ninanalify mo, but you cannot nullify relationships, right? So naiiwan yan doon. At saka sa onset ng contract, andun yan. So, pwede pa rin siya maging beneficiary. So, technically, pwedeng dalawang wife mo maging beneficiary kung nag-annul ka at nag-remarry ka, so legally, meron silang sa iyo pareho. Okay? Yan yung yan. And remember, life insurance preserves the human life value. Yan yung value niya. Yan yung monetary human life value we need to identify. Now, so, anong klaseng insurances ba meron? So, merong traditional na lahat ng mga tinuro sa amin nung bata akong advisor are now all traditional. And then, the birth of VULs and unit link. Okay? So, yan yung situation. So, there's traditional and there's investment link. Okay? Let's talk about traditionals. So, sa traditional, ang pinaka-base mo rito is what you call a term insurance, also known as a pure insurance. Okay? In term insurance, only death benefits are provided for a limited and specified time period. May period, may time, na pag hindi mo ni-renew, mag-expire. Okay? So, that's what you call a term insurance. Walang cash or investment values yan. It's pure coverage. And generally, it increases premiums with age. So pwedeng, Randall, bumili ako ng term, hindi naman gumalaw for 10 years. Okay? Kaya hindi gumalaw yan, priced in na yung premium mo for 10 years. In-average out at they maybe follow the discounting factor towards it. Kaya yung 10-year term mo is more expensive than your 1-year term. Maybe later on, as you get older, pwedeng cheaper na yung 10-year term mo. Pero kasi, pin-rise in mo yan. So, pwede like in other countries, you can buy a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year term. Sa Pilipinas, nakita ko 5-year, 10-year lang. Pero pag lumampas ka na, tataas talaga yung premium. So, yan yung term insurance. Now, generally, either it's a level term or it's a decreasing term. The level term, the face amount stays the same throughout the life of the policy. So, yung 1 million ko, 2 million ko na term, okay, hindi magbabago yan hanggat binabayaran ko yung premium. Although, tumataas yung premium ko. Nakita ko na yan kasi I bought a 5-year term, I then nag-renew, ngayon mahal, in the next 5 year, I'm now seeing that my term becoming more and more expensive. But I don't mind. I'm paying for the coverage. And then there's a decreasing term. The amount the premium is constant, but the coverage decreases over time. And the application for this is the MRI, the Mortgage Redemption Insurance. So when you borrow, you do a housing loan with BDO, BPI, East West, they also ask you to pay for an MRI. Okay? I'm just about to renew my MRI. Okay? And eventually, if you have a 10-year loan, palit ng palit yung coverage mo. Pero yung binabayaran mo the same. MRI kasi yan. Okay? Ang concept, pag namatay ka, bayad yung loan mo. Hindi ka na mag-iiwan ng utang sa pamilya mo. Okay? And covered na yung bangko. So, yan yung adaptation of a decreasing term. And usually, this is in a group term facility. Okay? Group term facility yan. Now, let's talk about term insurance. Personally, ako I'm studying, I like term insurance, they're cheap, but they have their own limitations also. Okay? And here's one of the, lahat ng products may pros, may cons. So true to its name, term insurance provides death benefit for a definable period of time or a term. But less than 20% of term insurance policies are still in force when the insured dies and therefore never pay a claim. Okay? So basically, 80% na bumili ng term, hindi nila sa umaabot sa death. So hindi na sila nakakapag-claim ng benefit nila. Which is fine because if I don't want coverage until I'm old, then I get term. Okay? But that's the data, no? So only 20%, less than 20% I remain in force upon death and therefore never pay a claim. So this product tends to be the least expensive insurance initially, but either the face amount decreases or the premium increases as the insured gets older, and limited versatility. No? Insurance provide death benefit and protection has no cash values, no professional values, and yun nga, pag hindi mo nabayaran yan, lapse yan kagad. So yan yung ano. Pero may advantage yan kasi mura yan. O yan, di ba? Some people advocate for term. Later on, we'll do the discussion. Ano? So yan yung situation. Ako, I'm a hybrid person. I have VUL, pero I have term. I do my own assessment on what I think I need as I go forward. So don't knock it off. I don't like advisors saying that term is bad. It's not. No, it's good. It has a purpose. Like anything else, it has a purpose. It's being used. In fact, there's no such thing as a perfect product. That's why you have to understand and how to use this properly. Practical lang I know advisors, no way magbebenta ng term. So, anong nangyari? May mga taong kausap sila, term lang gusto, hindi nila nabibentahan. Bumibili sa iba. Close business pa din. Sabi ko, doesn't make any sense. Diba? Ang nagamit kliyente, make them understand. So, term life insurances are convertible and renewable. You can convert them. Okay, advantage. Pwedeng, wala akong pera ngayon. Term lang. Later on, may pang-upgrade, may pera na akong upgrade. I can now cover it. And the advantage yan, you now lock in the insurability. Kasi pwedeng, ngayon, bumili ako, wala akong sakit, bumili akong term. 5 years from now, nagka-cancel ako. Technically speaking, pwede ko i-convert sa VUL. Wala akong magawa company kasi nga, it's already nakalock in a guaranteed insurability can up to the coverage that you have. Okay? Siguro hindi mo na makukuha yung mga health benefits, mga ganun. Pero yung face amount, equal yan. So if I have a 2 million term, I can now convert it to a BUL. Now, all terms are renewable. Basta, pag nag-due yan, within the 60-day period, 30-day period, regular policy, you can now still renew it every year. Although some term may limit until 65, 70, although lately mataas na yung mga limit until 80, siguro kung aabot ka pa doon, di ba? So, all contracts are convertible, are renewable at a certain, depending on the company or the product design, at a certain age, may limit sila. Okay? Now, old school na ngayon, ano, mayroong permanent insurance. Okay? Ito na yung cash value insurances. Ito yung whole life, ito yung endowment. Ito yung ayaw nila Dave Ramsey, nila yung mga finance advocate. Okay? Whole life, okay, and endowment. So, aralin natin kung ano yun. Sa whole life, there is insurance protection until age 100. Premiums, you pay until age 100. And the policy matures at age 100. So, hindi siya term, may cash value siya, and magmamature, mag-i-equal na yung cash value mo doon sa face amount mo pag abot mo ng 100. O, di ba? Matured na. Okay. Most mortality tables consider all person dead by the age 100 and therefore do not compute life expectancy above 100. Ang advantage ito, level ng premium mo. So, kinuha mo ito ng bata, hanggang tumanda ka, babayaran mo yan. But technically, you pay for it continuously. Yan yung mangyayari na. Now, dahil nobody wants to pay forever, lumabas yung mga limited pay context. So, may ordinary pay, dire-diretso bahay mo, pwede mag-premium offset yan, kukunin sa cash value mo, pero basically, continuous pa rin ang premium mo. Okay? Pwede nga, fully paid up. Ginagamit nyo pa yun, yung mga premium offset, yung mga so 90s. Pero basically, binabawas yun sa cash value mo, pinababayad ng premium. Okay? So, pwedeng 10 years mo lang binayaran, tapos nabayad na sila. So, I think there's a big controversy because a lot of people pay 10 years to pay pero offset pala. So, nung bumaba na yung mga interest returns, bumaba na yung dividends, they ask people to pay longer. Marami nagalit. Okay? So, those are your ordinary pay life with some options. Now, meron mo lumabas na limited pay, guaranteed limited pay. Protection mo until age 100, maturity mo age 100, pero limited pay period na. Pwede binayaran mo yan in 10 years, in 12 years. Meron pa single pay. Okay, so basically, kinumpress mo yung paying period, nilagyan mo ng discounting factor, nung binayaran mo yan. So technically, binayaran mo yan until age 100, pero kinumpress mo yan, kaya mahal din siya. So yung mga 10 year to pay, mahal yan. Naalala ko mga pangalan nun, ng mga taga-Sunlight. Sun Solution din. Ayan, mga ganyan yung mga pangalan ng mga produkto. Baka sa mga Sunlight, kung naka-encounter ka yan, malamang nabenta namin yun noong 90s. Tagal, no? Tagal. Okay. Yun yung mga pangalan niya, no? Okay. Sa Pila, meron pang 777. Mga taga-Pila na. Naalala ko pa mga paano mga produkto noon eh. Okay. Yung mga asset protector. Manulife ba yun? Parang marami ako inaral dati. So, iba-iba. But basically, they're all forms of a permanent type of insurance. Okay. Now, dahil wala namang gusto mag-entay na forever, 100, at gusto nila kumita din, lumabas na ngayon yung endowment. So, endowment is an insurance that provides a benefit if one, death occurs during a specified number of years, namatay ka, okay, within the period, bayad ka. Or, natapos na yung period, okay, buhay ka pa, matured na yung policy, bibigyan na sa'yo. Let's say 20 years. Endowment 20. Okay? So, endowment 20, for 20 years, between 0 to 20 years, namatay ka, bayad ka. 20 years, buhay ka pa, bibigyan na sa'yo yung maturity. Okay? So ito, nalala ko yung mga pangalan ha, Sun Saver 20. Sa mga sa Sunlight. Sa PhilAm, Estate Creator. Yung mga ganyan. So, pag yung mga binabagit ko, history, pwede, sabi nga Randall, pwede kang historian. Okay? Nalala ko mga pangalan niya na mga ganyang situation. May nakaka-relate pa sa inyo? Wala na nakaka-relate. Okay. So, asset protector. Okay. So, yun yung mga luma. Okay. Nanay ko. Okay. Okay. Sige. Sun accumulator. Ano ba mga name niya? Future protect. Ano ba? Hindi, may pangalan sa insular eh. No, may insular na. Okay. Sa Sun Life, pension builder. Oh, yan. Pension builder. Okay. Baka hindi na sila, maka-retired na sila. Hindi na sila branch manager. Malamang retired na yung iba dyan. Okay. So, yan yung mga situation nila. Okay. Pension builder, pinam like this. Endowment, okay, so we do that specified period. Basta may maturity siya, yung payment period niya, pwedeng 5 years, pwedeng continuous, pero continuous siya protection niya, may maturity siya. Ang downside na endowment, mahal yung premium niya, tapos hindi ganun kalaki coverage. Pero people are buying endowment kasi gusto nilang kahit paano kumita yung pera nila. Okay? Now, not to knock it off today, I will not recommend endowments, no? But back then, yung mga IRR nito mga endowment na to, 8, 9, 10, 11, as much as 12%. Not bad. Guaranteed pa. Kasi usually endowments are guaranteed. Kasi dati, mataas ang mga interest rates. Okay? So, yan yung mga situation niya. Alright? So, endowments. Okay. Now, you know, I met somebody, okay, who, years ago, somebody to, Randall, thank you, nag-mature na. Apparently, I sold him a 20-year endowment. And this happened a few years ago pa. Nag-mature na. We both forgot about that. Pero ganun katagal na. Ganun katanda na ako. Yung mga ibang binenta ko na endowment, nag-mature na. 25 years maturity, o diba? Ikaw na. Okay. So, types of endowment, may regular endowment. Okay. Endowment at 20. Endowment at 60. May mga ganun. Endowment at 55. May mga ganun. Okay. Regular endowment yon. Now, meron naman mga anticipated endowment. Yung pay for 5 years, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, we will pay you out. Ganon. I think, pinakamadaming na benta nito is Finlike Life. Yung produkto nila na Scholar Gold. It's an anticipated endowment. Okay? It gives you anticipations. Naglalabas siya ng payments. They sold a lot of that. In fact, during the heydays, people were buying educational plans. It can be an insurance. It can be a pre-need. Okay? Manulife, Sun Life, Insular, Pinam sold a lot of these things. The first ones. No? Even AXA, I remember, had endowments too. They sold a lot of these endowments because for education purposes. Now, the downside is they were not as attractive as the pre-need. The pre-need are usually cheaper with better returns. Pero kasi the pre-need did not follow the rules, did not follow the security, it was not about unsound yung design niya. I got into trouble because marami na pikit sa akin pre-need company. I kept mentioning statements like that. I don't care. Anticipated. So, yun yung mga binenta nila. So, 15, 5, 10 years to pay, 11, 12, 13, 14, so may natin Scholar Gold, yan. Sino yung Scholar Gold graduate? Wow! Okay, nakakuha ka ng pera from Scholar Gold. Okay? That's how old we are. Okay? That's how old we are. Okay? So, yan. Situation. Kung maalala, I remember sa product of Manulife. May taga Manulife pa dito. Na ito din yung panglaban nila. Kasi sa Sun Life, ang panlaban nila, Sun Saver, tsaka Sun Accumulator. Insular also had this product eh. You know, I used to memorize all of these things. I have to review myself now. Okay? Mami ang ahente. Okay, second generation. Iba sa niya, third generation na. Okay. Now, permanent life policies can now be participating or non-participating. Pag sinabi mong participating, I value. Okay? I think there was an even older product in Insular, no? Usually kasi Insular, maganda yung mga design nila eh. I remember that time eh. I assess no products, no? Up to now, I still assess products. They had good products back then. So yan. So permanent life insurance policies can be participating or non-participating. So ito na yung pumasok na may mga produkto na participating. You participate in a divisible surplus so you get dividends. And dati maganda yung dividends. Umabot pa ako ng 14% yung kinikita ng dividends mo. Naging 12, naging 11 ngayon, wala na. Okay? So those are permanent. And yung in the early 2000, two companies, they mutualized Sun Life and Manulife, where the policyholders who own participating policies Because pag participating policies, may ownership ka. No? Kasi the mutual. So, binigyan ka ng shares of the company. Okay? So, maraming kumita dyan kasi biglang binayaran sila for demutualization. Meron ba dito naka-benefit sa demutualization? Ang either Manulife or Sun Life? Ako, I'm one of them. In fact, I traded their stocks for a while and I made money. Wala. Ganun ako katanda. Si Gerardo, saan ka nakakuha ng demutualization? Si Edwin. Saan kayo nakakuha? Dalawa lang naman yan, San tsaka Manyo. No? Okay. Personal policy niya yan? Bata pa ba kayo niyan? O kumuha kayo niyan? How old were you, surprisingly? Because this was like 2002, 2001. How old were you then? When you got those policy? My mother was the age. Okay. Naglabasa na naman. 20 years old daw siya nung kumuha. Okay. Okay. Sige. History. So, yan yung participating. So, participating in divisible surplus to dividends and non-participating wala. So, some products sold this, some product did not sell. So, malas mo kung bumili ka na non-participating policy from Manulife and Sun Life, hindi ka nakasama sa demutualization. Okay? Kung term yung binili mo, hindi ka nakasama sa demutualization. So, yun yung story niya. Now, because ayaw na nila ng endowment, ayaw nila ng whole life, they started to offer the VUL. No? The VUL was originally, I think, the first company that got the license was Prudential, PruLife. And the first company that sold a lot of this was AXA. Kasi, so, sila yon. So, they're the two pioneers of the VULs in nahuli yan. Philip, si Sun Life, si Manulife, nahuli yan, si Insular. Nauna talaga si Prudential, PruLife, and saka si AXA. Sila yung dalawang matunog na matunog. Okay, sa VUL. Okay. Honeypot. Tama ba yun yung product? Honeypot sa AXA. Okay. Nalala ko mga history. Dami kong in-assess, dami kong binasa ang book. So, VUL, variable universal or unit link, differs from traditional life insurance because the underlying values, okay, were VUL created because companies cannot give higher return before. I think the VULs came into because of the restrictions of the traditional plans. Sobrang dami na restriction where to put, kasi ang tawag mo doon, yung funds noon, allocated. May requirement, dapat ang investment mo, kailangan government security lang, blah, 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 ang daming restrictions. So the the VUL, nalito na ako, the VUL came in because there's a need for it already. Okay? And of course, this was popular in other countries that we brought in the Philippines. Again, Prudential was first, and AXA was second, and these two became the pioneers of this product, if my memory serves me right. And then eventually, everybody began offering them. So VUL, or unit-linked life insurance, differs from traditional whole life insurance because now the values can be invested at the direction of the policy owner. Dati wala kayong, ang policy owner walang say kung saan dadali na pera. Ngayon, pwede na. So pwede nang ilagay sa mga many sub accounts like equity, fixed income, balance. Okay, sobrang, ayan. Yeah, I remember, sunod-sunod naman na nag-open ibang companies eh. Okay? Pero nauna talaga si Pru at saka si AXA. Okay, each policy owner is given the opportunity to direct the cash value according to their own risk tolerance, investment objective, and personal asset allocation. So, parang ginawa ng BUL, okay, so ito na, ikaw na bahala mag-decide kung saan mo lalagay. Okay? May pros and cons yan. So, ganun yun. So, parang niliberalize mo yung traditional whole life products of the past. Now, BUL or unit link, kasi depende, no? I think European companies call it unit link or investment link. North American companies call it BUL. Okay? Yun lang yung trivia nun, but they're the same. Or investment link or unit link or whatever it is they call it. So the policy owner assumes the most risk in a variable policy in a BUL, but also has the potential for the highest return with respect to whole life. Okay? If you're stock market, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about comparing it from old BUL against traditional. Okay? So BUL can give you a higher potential return and can integrate the policy most closely with your investment philosophy, pero nasa iyo din yung risks. So variable life, kasi isa traditional, may mga guaranteed cash values yan. Okay, may dividends you can. So meron ka sigurado makukuha. Sa VUL, pwede kang, technically, pwedeng mag-zero or mawala yung pera mo. Okay? So yeah, so VUL is typically recommended for long-term needs where cash accumulation as well as death benefit protection is a priority. So ang concern mo, coverage and growth, then VUL is something that you can consider. Okay? Now, ito na, kita mo, bagay na bagay mo yung picture ko. BTID. Marami yung nag-away, marami na nagkainisan dito. Okay? Hindi pa uso ang DDS versus Dilawan. Uso na ang argument, ang BTID. Okay? So dito na, pag-usapan na natin. Okay? BTID means buy term invest the difference. BTID, there is pro and there is cons. There are those advocating it. There are celebrity influencers advocating BTID. Okay? The most controversial one is Vince Rapisura. Okay? Very feeling niya siya si Dave Ramsey of the Philippines. Diba? Very anti-VUL. Dave Ramsey is anti-whole life as far as I remember. Okay? Merong namang yan si Vince, and then there are other people na by term. May mga groups na ayaw ng ganyan. So may pros yan, may cons yan. So by term, vote na. Invest the difference. Okay. Ang BTID, may pros, may cons. Let's talk about the pros. Okay. Anong pro ng BTID? Number one, it's a DIY thing. You can decide how much you want to cover. You can decide whether you want to be more investment savvy and so forth and so on. Okay? So, strategy siya na pwede mong gawin. Okay? Yan yung situation mo. I buy term, ito lang ha. Okay. Ang budget ko sa premium, 50,000 kada buwan, kada taon, 50,000. If I buy a VUL, I can buy a VUL worth 50,000, let's say, that 50,000, let's say, a million. Okay? Part of it, okay, part of it doon, and then part of it sa investment. Okay, good. Or, I will now buy a term wherein, let's say my 1 million coverage is now 5,000 pesos. I will buy 5,000 pesos and the 45,000 pesos I will now invest in let's say in a mutual fund. Okay? Para fair. Kasi you cannot use stock market investing kasi iba, it's a bit different dimension. But maybe you can use MF. Right? It can be cheaper. Well, it can be cheaper and so on. So yan yung advantages niya. Ano ang disadvantage ng BTID? The disadvantage of BTID, it relies heavily on the discipline of a person. Okay? So pwedeng pag BTID ako, kung consistent ka na tao, then this is good for you. Pero remember, money is behavioral. It's not mechanical. Pero kung ikaw, very inconsistent ka, makikita mo na baka hindi mo nga, kasi ito yung argument ko. Maraming pro-BTID, they BT, but they don't ID. Ayun paano I'm saying? Or sometimes, hindi pa nila mabayaran yung term nila. So, minsan yung mga nakiki-advocate na to, hindi naman nila pinapractice din. So, BTID itong context. So, yan yung one way of the others. Okay? So, that is the advantage. The disadvantage is, remember, my principle, money not invested is money spent. So, if you are erratic, you cannot do. So, may advantage kasi iba yung VUL, may makulit na advisor na naniningil. Sorry, love ko kayo, pero minsan makulit kayo. Alam mo yung nagpa-follow up, mayroong statement, may nagre-remind sa'yo. And then the other side, alam mo, pag hindi mo binayaran, maglalak sa policy mo. So, na-force ka. So may mga tao, that's why yung mga OFW na kausap ko, na minsan yun ang savings nila, kasi it became a forced saving element for them. So, I'm not saying that VUL is bad. It may not be for everybody. Okay? May not be everybody. But for some people, it worked for them. Marami yung kalalang pera na dahil sa VUL nakaipon. Yun ang nagamit nila. Na kung wala yung VUL, malamang namili lang na sa katutak na Jordan. Ano mga ganong situation. Okay? Nailabas na sa luho. So, in that scenario, then okay. Kasi the argument is, no, I could have made more money, di ba? If I did it a BTID, I think that's a moot and academic argument. Okay? That's a very theoretical argument. But in reality, ganyan nangyayari. Okay? That's a scenario. Okay? And sometimes, and I saw this very cunningly, may mga companies na ngayon, nagtaas na mga term coverages nila in terms of premium. Kaya minsan, meron kaming sinimulate, parehong return. Bakit? Meron ko nakita na after 20 years, nag-outperform si BUL kaysa kay BTID. So, hindi lagi meron ng isang scenario na nakita. So, paano nangyari yun? Napansin ko na may mga term na mahal. Kasi sa Pilipinas, mahal ang term. So, nung nakita ko, nung binibreakdown ko yan. Tapos, for the last, siguro because of this argument, may mga BULs na napansin ko, bumababa yung COI. Kaya pag kino-compare, pag naging discerning na to-compare, hindi na siya ganong, yung argument na this is cheaper, but that's not always hold true. Kaya merong cross-threshold sila. Now, is it in all products? Hindi. There are a few products na gano'n nilalabas. Okay? So, yan yung nakita kong observation. Now, ano naman yung disadvantage? Ano naman yung advantage ng BTID? Number one, you are in control. Number two, you can direct. Diba, paano kayo ako mag-invest? Diba, kayo, ako mangyari. And number three, it sometimes can be cheaper for you. You can maximize your coverages. Kasi, diba, pwedeng, I can take control of my own investing. Kasi, basta market ako, cryptocurrency ako, gusto ko coverage. Now, advisors, ito ang tip ko sa inyo. Do not go into the argument of BTID. Kasi ang goal natin is to serve our client, is to give them what is in their best interest. If it's in their best interest to do BTID, and so be it. But it's in their best interest to be BUN, and then so be it. Our goal is to educate them. Our goal is to give them both picture and they make that solution. Now, let me share the experience of one of your future moderators. His name is Garrett Maramit. Dahil si Garrett, minentor ko yan, alam niya na I have to teach him the right way. Ang ginawa niya ngayon, so whenever he presents, he shows both pictures. Pinapakita niya. This is the BTID way. This is the BUL way. You should make a choice. Did you know that as per his experience, 8 to 9 out of 10 would opt to do BUL? Now, choice nila yun. They feel that this is better for them. Tayo as advisor, we've given them both options. Okay, kaya nga tip ko sa inyo, if you carry, kung mutual fund yung company nyo, trust, magpalisensya kayo para walang tumapong dali ko sa inyo. Okay? Huwag nyo ipilit. Okay? And that guy is an MDRT, so he knows what he's talking about. Then yet, very careful. So there is a right way of doing this sa BTID. May downside yan, may pros yan, may disadvantages yan. Lahat yan meron. So mali yung sobrang rapid ng pagdepensa sa BUL. Mali naman yung sobrang rapid ng pag-push ng BTID. Kasi everybody is correct if it's a certain level of context. Gets nyo? So ako, I do not agree with Vince saying this is entirely evil. Okay? That's what I mean. But I also do not agree by some overly zealous advisors na BUL is the next best things to after sliced bread. Mga ganung situation nila. Hindi natin role yun. Ang role natin is to give the options, let them decide, teach them, and do it the right way. So, that is what I understand. That's my stand with BTID. Personally, I have both. I BTID, I BUL. So, alam mo yun? So, Marvin Guermo has BUL and he BTID. Okay? So, it's a question of planning, seeing the things like that. So people ask me, should I beat the ID? My answer is depends. Depends. I look at their assessment. If somebody tells me that they're very good in investing, they're very disciplined, then okay, good. But somebody approaches me, hindi nga nila masustain yung auto-debit, tapos hindi nga natin debit. Di ba? Paano ko mag-ano niyan? Hindi ka makaipon. Okay, so, yun yung situation. Any more question about BTID? Di ba? Merong way to deal BTID kasi. Napansin nyo, I don't make statements about BTID. Bakit? Number one, people will always believe what they want to believe in. And that for me is a problem. Your biases should not change what you need to do and act on the best interest of your client. Okay? Kaya mahalaga financial planning. Okay, yan. So it's a situation. So, wag na makigulo, wag na kayo makapag-away. Kung may lang, hayaan nyo lang sila. BTID, diba? VUL is evil. Hayaan mo sila. Okay. Basta tingnan nyo yan. Okay. Okay, if the client is young po, washer po ba ng limited pay whole life insurance, then there's a difference para po forever ang renew? Kasi yung limited pay, pag tinignan mo, mahal din siya actually. Okay? Mahal din siya. Hindi naman siya mura. So, I think you have to make a judgment call. I think at the end of the day, it's really more of a hybrid of plans and not yan. O wag daw maging VR. Okay? I know him, I not know him, but we once shared the stage. I have nothing against him. People always, I don't know, they compare me to him. Hindi naman. Lalaki pa naman ako. Okay. So, ayan. Okay naman eh. Alam mo, don't demonize him. Because may point naman din siya. Okay? So don't take everything he says, number one, with a grain of salt. Don't demonize him. Okay? And then learn something. See where it's coming from. Understand kasi he is right in his own context. Is that the context of everybody? No. Pero may value yun. Okay? Okay? So, merong ano yan. Example BTID. Nagipit ako. Yung pera ko kapag term lang kayo bayaran. Term lang. Okay? Or, wala akong pera. Marami ako na ilagay sa pera ko. Mag-ano siya. Mag-premium offset. So, may pro and con talaga siya. Okay? Okay? So, maganda yung turo ni Vince. Ayos din yung kanyang 15, 5, 60, 10, 10 sa financial planning. Meron lahat ng tao may value. Okay? So, di ba? Huwag na siguro magturo si Willie Revillame ng BTID. The rest, di ba? Vince is a smart guy. He's a professor. No? So, at the end of the day, pero, pag kayo, huwag na kayo makigulo doon. Kaya nga, ano ba yung isa? PIT, Pinoy Insurance Law. Away-away lahat ng tao. Okay, di ba? So, bigyan ko lang chismis. You know, they blocked me in PIT because the day wherein they kept on, meron silang day that they can promote their products. I posted, my post was about education. I never promote anything, remember? It's always about financial education. Nag-violate daw ako ng rules nila by posting financial education and not products. O, di ba? Sabi naman mga kaibigan ko, Coach, okay lang na ma-block ka dyan. Di ba? Nakakasira pa ng reputation yan. Okay, so tama naman. You know, and I have my own groups anyway. So, next. Okay na. So, nawala ako doon. So, okay lang. Although, you know, before, di ba, I don't have. Ganun talaga yung gagawin ko. Okay, now, pag-usapan naman natin ng BUL. Okay. Since lahat naman kayo BUL champions, bibilis ako na lang. So, the BUL, okay, is a product that carries the BTID concept inside. May convenience yan. Kumbaga 7-Eleven yan. Nandiyan na lahat. So, basically, I got this from a guy named Ron Magsalin. No? Sinaya sa akin. So, VUL works, may premium binayad, may goes to a COI, a premium charge, may investment portion, and this is how actually it's spent. So, kaya makita mo, you cannot compare a mutual fund, a UITF, with a VUL because there's always a component that pays for insurance. So the advantage of this one, if something happens to you, then the VUL performs better than your investment fund. happens to you, then the VUL, the mutual fund, performs better. But you cannot compare both because they are not the same. That the way the design is. So merong context na mas lamang si mutual fund UITF than the VUL, may context na mas lamang si VUL than mutual fund. So it's now you need to understand. So pag single pay naman, lahat ina-allocate tapos sa loob nagkukuha ng charges for your fund. Hindi pwedeng mawala yung COI in a VUL because sa totoo lang yung some people complain na mataas yung COI. Hindi pwedeng mawala yung COI kasi insurance policy yung binili mo. Di ba? Hindi mo pwedeng, kaya nga advisors, do not sell it as a investment product. It's not. It's an insurance product with an investment benefit. But more than anything else, first and foremost, you stand by the strength of the need for that particular product that people need life insurance coverage. Right? So, the BTID, so basically, you buy term investment difference. The BUL, this is what happens. So, BTID is a strategy, BUL is a product. Okay? Credit to Ron Magsalin for sharing this. He shared this to me like 6-7 years ago. So, credit to the guy for sabi ko, hindi ko na i-redo to. Ginawa mo na lang. That's more than enough. So, that's a concept. Now, the disadvantage of BUL is cost. Okay, number one, may COI. And number two, even the investment management fee of a BUL is higher than a UITF. That's what I saw. Cheaper would be UITF, followed by mutual fund, and then by the BUL. So merong cost yan. May COI at saka may investment cost that usually, sometimes, not all the time, can be higher than a particular UITF or something like that. So may disadvantage siya. Pero may advantage naman siya. Okay, number one, it's flexible. It's the most flexible type of an insurance product. Amendment of policies can be done such as increase and decrease in benefits, add and delete riders, or you can even do switching, which I don't recommend, but you can do switching of funds depending on your investment strategy. Okay? You can do that. You can do that in a particular product. You can't do that in a traditional product. Second, there's an option to pay more when financial situation is better and an option for premium holiday without terminating the policy. So, my statements during the early part of the lockdown, sabi ko, kung may pera kayong excess, may bumagsak ang market, may excess kayong money, maganda mag-top up ng iyong mga BUN or inyong mga mutual fund, depending on what you have. So, if those who follow that advice are smiling today, kasi di ba, they were able to ride the recovery. That's why, if you did that kind of a strategy, up ka ngayon. Okay? Or at least, na-wipe out mo lahat ng losses mo. Okay? So, now your VUL can allow you to do that. Okay? At the same time, remain to be covered. Number three, this is the behavioral side. VUL, kaya maraming tao, ay yung tinuturo nila Garrett, kahit na pinapakita nila pareho, bumibili pa rin ng VUL, kasi nga the behavioral side, which we talked about earlier, first session. VUL makes you feel that having insurance is something nice to have because it's about living. It's about having something for your future like retirement. So, di ba, yung context kasi ng tao, ayaw na insurance, patay-patay insurance yan, wala mamamatay ako, may ganung connotation. Kaya maraming Pinoy ayaw pa din. Kaya nagugustuhan nila yung VUL. Okay, pwede ka pa na withdraw yung pera. Ano. So, may mga ganung testimonies na OFW ko, 15 years ako nung pagdating ko, withdraw ko yung pera, napagtayo ko ng negosyo, may mga ganung storya sila. And that's why you don't knock it off. It works for some people, not for all, but it works for some people. And lastly, tax benefits. Bakit? Investments, when you transfer it, it's always going to be part of your taxable estate. Upon death to Kasi di ba, ito nga yung argument ng BIR. Bakit hindi namin tataksan yung investment yung BUL nyo? Teka, insurance product to. Kasi, ang maganda nito, while you are living, it's now treated as an investment, but upon your death, everything now becomes an insurance payout. Therefore, you can remove it from your taxable estate, you can identify kung sino bibigyan mo. I don't need to follow the legitimes. I can give it to, I have 5 children, I can only give it to one. Okay, all, assuming that hindi pwede habulin ng 4 yung isa. Okay, hindi pwede habulin ng namin. Kasi, you already declared as an irrevocable benefit, di ba? As against a mutual fund, a UITF stock or whatever, hindi pwede. Now, yung Bitcoins, pwede itago. Basta kailangan password. But, yung challenge na, but the tax benefits. Okay? So, may mga benefits din siya na nag-work sa kanya. Now, para lang klaro tayo, when comparing, okay, life insurance policies, it's extremely important to make sure that you know exactly what is and what is not guaranteed in the contracts. In the contracts, mali yung BUL is appropriate for individuals who are able to and are comfortable with accepting a greater risk of volatility. So, kailangan na intindihan niyo yun. Okay? Very important before when you're pushing for something. But, as I always say, for all of you, my dear friends, okay, there is no such thing as the best product. Okay? BTID is the best. BUL. True Life is better. Sun Life is better. Di ba? Walang ganon. You always need to subscribe to the principle of suitability. And that's what makes you a good advisor. Yan yung kaya importante na ito yung tinuturo ko sa masterclass. You make recommendation according to the best interest of your clients in your best knowledge, competent enough, understanding all the paradigms, investment economics, the behavioral side, so that you can come up with a more informed decision. Is it a guarantee that's going to be the best recommendation? No. But it's better than, not going through all of these things. Agree, guys? Ay, no oras na. Delayed na naman ako. Okay. 12% compounding interest doon sa BUL. Sino naman nagsabi nun? Grabe naman yun. Okay? Hanap mo ako ng 12%. Lalagay ko ng pera na compounding, ha? Na guaranteed. Bigyan nyo ako niyan. Ako muna maglalagay. Ayos, di ba? Okay. Hanggang ngayon may mga ganun-ganun pang situation. Now, ako avoid nyo na yung mga BUL is better than SSS. Mga ganun situation. Mas maganda pa meron akong health kaysa may PhilHealth, mga ganun. Huwag na kayo gumawa ng mga ganun-ganun kasi hindi naman contextually correct din. Okay? So, yun lang situation. Now, let's talk about non-life. Okay ba kayo, guys? How's our pacing? Medyo, I don't think I can end on time. Are you guys okay? Guys, I will not take it against you. If you want to leave, go ahead. Anyway, you can just watch the recording. I know this has been late. Okay? Yeah, yung BL comparing to bank, medyo meron namang context, pero ako siguro hindi ko lang siya style. Okay. I know, I think Garrett did it, but meron siyang reasons to do that. So, basta factual lang kayo sa data. Okay. Now, ano ba yung mga non-life naman? Okay, so for tayo non-life. So sa life, basically sa non-life, dalawang uri yan. Either it's a property type or it's a casualty type. Kaya nga sa ibang countries, ang pangalan nito, ang tawag nila sa non-life, hindi non-life, property and casualty, P&C. So I used to work for an American boss. I mean, stop calling it non-life, it's P&C. Depende where you are, di ba? So, but basically, P&C and non-life are the same. So property, fire, marine, motor car, and other special risk or allied fires, lines of fire, and then casualty, fidelity, money insurance, and so forth and so on. So, in situation. Now, before we do that, let's talk about principles. Ang non-life, mayroong principles na iba sa life. Pag inaral mo non-life, parang hindi siya, parang life at saka non-life, parang pareho lang silang insurance, pero ibang-iba yung operations nila. Okay? Number one, ang non-life, meron niyang general principle on contribution. So, several insurers covering the same interest, the same peril, the same subject matter, and in case of double insurance, the co-insurer will ratably share the loss of the insured person. Okay, ito. So, kunyari, meron akong bumili ako ng 1 million Pro, 1 million Sun, 1 million AXA, 1 million Manulife, 1 million Insulant. Okay, namatay ako. How much do I get? How much will my family get? 1 million from 5 insurance companies. Bumili ako 1 million each. How much do I get? 5M. Tama. Diba? 5M. Clearly. Walang question na yan. Okay, clear. Face amount. Depende na sa cash value. Basta face amount. Okay. Pero that thing does not apply in non-life. Assuming meron akong building na ang building ko worth 10 million, pina-insure ko. Okay? Bumili ako 10 million sa Standard, 10 million sa Pioneer, at 10 million sa MAPRE. Okay? Okay? 10 million, 10 million, 10 million. Assuming yung damage ko is 10 million. Okay? Nasunog. 10 million ang damage. 10 million ang coverage ko. Assuming. Nag-file ngayon ako ng claim. Hindi to life insurance na every company magbabayad sa akin. Pagdating ng check ko, assuming everything is acceptable, 3.33, 3.33, 3.33. Maghahati-hati sila dun sa pagbayad sa akin. In the case of more than doubling insurance, they will now ratably share in the insured portion. So, sino looking? Ikaw. Bakit? Nagbayad ka ng 3 premium. They do that to prevent the insured from recovering more than full amount of loss. Because in non-life, you cannot claim beyond your losses. Now, on the flip side, maraming tao masyadong matalino. May bahay ako worth 5 million. Pero pag nasunog naman to, hindi naman magiging 5 million ang damage. Kasi hindi naman masusunog ang foundation. May iwan naman ang pader or mga ganyan. So, baka malamang 2.5 million lang ang pwedeng ma-damage ito. So, gusto magtipid ng premium. So, in-insure na yung bahay niya, 2.5. Kasi feeling niya, hanggang 50, totoo naman, to a certain degree, mahirap naman magkaroon ng 100% damage. 2.5 million. 2.5 million. Okay. Paglabas ng cheque niya, 1.25 lang yung labas. Bakit ganon? Okay. In the case of double insurance, they will rate the share. In the case of under-insurance, ikaw na yung pumapasok as na co-insured. Okay? This prevent people from not paying the correct premium. Okay? So, may ganun yung favor yan. So, that is the principle of contribution in that time. Are you following? So, hindi pwedeng, wag mo i-over-insure kasi lugi ka. Wag mo rin under-insure kasi yari ka. Okay? Now, sometimes, merong mga malalaking case, they coordinate the benefit. They coordinate the coverage. Kasi may mga building na hindi kaya siya lang. So, they can actually, they distribute it among, diba? They have 5 insurers. Like SM. SM has, I think, 2 or 3 people covering it. 2 or 3 companies. So they do some level of coordination. They do level of sharing the risk for that. So, gets nyo? Okay. Next principle. Principle of subrogation. Okay. Ano naman yung principle of subrogation? Okay. It pertains to the house. Sige, explain ko na lang. Okay. Nagda-drive ako. Okay. Nagda-drive ako. Okay. Sa EDSA. Binangga ako ni Alvin Paternal sa likod. Bang! Binangga. Bagong-bago yung kotse ko. Binangga ni Alvin sa likod. Boom! Nag-damage. Now, question. Natakabat siya. Natakabat legality. Meron bang legal obligation sa akin si Alvin? Dinamage yung kotse ko. Meron ba? Of course. Binangga mo yan. Bayaran mo yan. Di ba? Now, I'm a busy man. I don't want to deal with Alvin. Okay? May insurance naman ako. I will let my insurance cover it. So, final ko na insurance. Okay? My insurance paid for it. Pinagawa niya and so forth and so on. Okay? Now, can I now go back to Alvin? Alvin, bayaran mo yung binangga mo. Okay? Bayaran mo yung binangga mo. Okay? Hindi porke pinagawa ng insurance company ko, wala ka na ano. Okay? Now, technically, the obligation of Alvin is still there. Pero, since nag-claim ka sa insurance company mo, nirelease mo na yung right to claim to them. That's the principle of subrogation. You have subrogated their right to them. So now, you don't have any right to file any claim against Alvin. The insurance company can now go after Alvin and ask Alvin to pay. Because the obligation of Alvin does not stop just because I was able to claim. But ako, since nabayar na ako, kaya pag nagpa-file kayo ng claim, pumipirma kayo ng quit claim. Okay? Pinipirmahan nyo na yun na hindi na kayo mag-claim. Tapos na kayo. Yan yung principle of subrogation. Now, Alvin says, teka, may insurance ako. Let my insurance pay your insurance. So, pwedeng gano'n na mangyari. The same principle, nagmamaneho si Erlinda Fabriaga. Okay? rights na doon yung insurance company. Why? The fact na nagpabayad ka kay insurance company na nag-claim ka, you have already subrogated your right to claim to that. That is the principle. And that is implicit in all contracts of indemnity. In other words, it's in all non-life. Nalaglag yung bumper ng kotse mo. Pinalitan nila. Sabi mo, akin na lang yung bumper. I-display ko sa living room ko. Di ba? Hindi na pwede. At kaya kanila na yun. Bahala na siya, ibebenta nila ng scrap o whatever. Kasi the fact na binira ka niya, wala ka ng claim. I see. Kaya pala sa UAE, ang insurance na may fault na driver, ano nabayad sa damages. Legally, ganun din naman dito. Di lang nagbabayad. Okay. So, yan yung downside. Okay. Proximate cause para sa non-life. Sa life, pag namatay ka, regardless of the cause. Sa totoo lang, namatay ka ng COVID, namatay ka ng cancer, namatay ka ng aksidente, bayad ka. It doesn't matter how you died. You're paid. Minsan may extra benefit. Yun lang. But basically, it doesn't matter. Sa non-life, kailangan ma-realize mo ano yung cost of claim. Kailangan ma-identify mo ano yung proximate cost. Ano ba yung dahilan kung bakit ka nagkaroon ng damage or ng claim? Okay? The proximate cost is the efficient and dominant cost. That's why you have that case. Dahil doon kaya ka nagka-loss. And loss is compensable only when it's proximately caused by the peril insured against. In other words, kung ang nag-cause ng damage sa car mo ay bagyo at wala kang insurance against bagyo, o yung tinatawag natin acts of nature, dati acts of God ang pangalan. Kung wala ka nun, wala kang claim kahit na may comprehensive insurance ka. Okay? Cosa proxima. Ayun. O yan, tama. Galing naman ni Lisa. Lawyer ka ba? Okay, so yan yung situation. So proximate cause. Lagi na. So every time in non-life, hahanapin nila bakit nagkaroon ng damage. Ano ba yung proximate cause? And dahil doon, tsaka ka mababayaran. Okay, compress nila. Sa life, hindi eh. Death is death. Regardless of how you died. Okay? Of course, tingin nila kung binigla mo everything. But generally, it doesn't matter whether you died from a heart attack, cancer, or, you got an accident. Assuming that everything is above board, you get paid. Okay? Now, meron din indemnity. Indemnity is payment. Okay? In non-life, there is a principle of indemnity. Okay? The insure, di ba kayo na, it's not a contract of indemnity like insurance. They pay you whatever your coverage is. Dito, hindi. Whether you have 10 million or 100 million coverage, but your damage is only 25,000, they will only get to be paid as much as 20. In fact, less kasi may participation pa, may depreciation pa, may taxes pa. So, kasi that's the principle of indemnity. The insurer shall compensate the insured only to the extent of its financial loss, and insured is not expected to gain by suffering a loss. Okay? So very clear on that, right? So kahit na may 1 million coverage ka, pero ang damage mo is 400, hanggang 400 ka lang talaga. Okay? So yung non-life mo, yung face amount mo, that just tells you yung limit. Okay? Or kasi other sessions na attendant ko, sample na binigay with several insurance for one portion of time. Sa non-life po yung Linda, yung coordination sa non-life yan, sa life. Wala labas na yung mga insurance company kung nagbayad sila sa isa. Individual yung claim mo. Yan. Now, pwede mo habulin kung bakit nagbayad si insurance A, si insurance B, si sabi hindi. Pare-pareho product, pare-pareho yung situation, may situation na kaya. Minsan, unless may nakita silang mali sa application. Okay. So, ibang animal siya. So, how do you get paid in non-life? It's not just the same. So, may monetary, they pay you. They give you cash. May reinstatement. Okay, they repair it for you, like cars. Sa car insurance, it's always reinstatement. They pay you. They don't pay you cash. They, in fact, they discourage you. They want you to bring it to the accredited shop. Okay? Reviewed by a third party called an adjuster, and agree to how much your NOA, sorry, statement. If you insist to be paid in cash, papayag yung insurance company. Pero they'll give you much lesser. So example, kung pinagawa mo kay Kasa yan, ang damage mo is 35, I'll pay you pero 15 lang. Bakit? Marami kasing case, nag-file ng claim, tapos pinagawa substandard, tapos magka-file na naman ng claim. Or they can replace the item with something similar. So they will stick to one that is cost-effective and convenient for them. Okay? Now, ano ba yung mga general types of non-life? Okay? So marami, pero I'll just do the common ones. So fire insurance is one of the most basic. So it is a contract whereby the insurer guarantees to pay the insured against direct loss or damage to his property by fire and lightning. A fire insurance, ang coverage niyan is usually fire and lightning. It covers the building and or contents. Now, here's the problem because of the proximate cause issue. Maraming pwedeng damages sa'yo na hindi lang fire and lightning. That can be covered by your fire insurance if you now elect to put in your allied perils. So you can now, these are common ones you can now add on to your policies. So may earthquake shock, earthquake fire. Okay, kasi the earthquake shock, sira, or fire nag-cause na sunog because, di ba, like ngayon, meron ng mga areas na may gas na, may typhoon or flood, di ba, binaha ka, okay, hindi naman sunog, pero binaha ka, pwede ka magka-claim. Okay, assuming there, burglary and housebreaking, di ba, iba ang burglary, pinasok ka, forceful entry, iba yung ninakawan ka ng yaya mo o ng driver mo o ng anak mo. Hindi yun burglary, hindi yun housebreaking. Internal yun. Okay? Hindi yun covered ng burglary and housebreaking. Okay, I'll answer you, Rachel. So, riots and strikes, also, pwedeng yung building mo, di ba, may nagrarally, di ba, DDAs, dilawan, nagbatuhan ng bote, bumagsak sa'yo, binasag ang mga salamin mo, di ba? Ano yun, you can now file a claim. Then may extended coverage, smoke, explosion, falling aircraft, vehicle impact. And there are many things, meron pa yung mga comprehensive talaga na habang nasusunog bahay mo, habang nagpapagawa ka ng bahay, they will pay for your rental support. Yung mga ganun sila. May mga depende na rin sa mga product nila. So take a look at it. Take a look at comprehensive home coverages and look at it from that. So this is the allied perils. Okay. Rachel asked me, this is for life insurance. Now, we cannot sell insurance when clients are in other country because there's an agreement. It's not that we don't allow. It's that the countries where they are, meron silang rules about it. Okay, kaya bawal sa atin. Okay? When they step in the Philippine shore, then yun pwede. Because these are our global agreements about contracts and insurance and stuff like that. So, hindi natin pwedeng gawin yan. Okay? At saka yun, di mo naman na-meet. Paano mo na-underwrite? Di ba? Paano kung pumunta sa abroad? Na-meet ko, na-underwrite ko, pwede. Pero, hindi ka naman, wala ka naman sa Philippine shore. You're not covered by the rules. Okay? Now, with the upcoming digital, I don't know how these things will change. I don't know actually. Sa totoo lang. I don't know how that's gonna... Kasi, pero pwede naman mag-open savings account. Paano nangyari yun? So, I don't know. We'll wait. We'll see. We'll see how these things will change. Kasi pwedeng digital space na eh. So, pwedeng, di ba, using a Philippine number, GCash. So, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Right? I'll maybe talk to the IC or, the digital providers later on. Kasi nagbabago na rin yung landscape eh. So, as to that happening, I don't know. Then, there's motor car insurance. Okay? Motor car insurance. Kanya kasi yung mga kotse ni Harris, no? Ganyan yung mga car. So, ginamit ko as example. So, motor car insurance, okay, pertains to the ownership, maintenance, and use of motor vehicles. Kasi mayroong mandatory, di ba? Yung CTPL, yung compulsory third-party liability, hindi ka makarehistro. Pero syempre, alam mo naman yung limitation na yun. So, people now get comprehensive coverages. So, the moment nilagay may OD theft, OD means own damage and theft, automatically makes you a comprehensive. So now you get paid for the loss and damage to motor vehicles, body theft or damage theft, then legal liability to third parties for death, bodily injury, or damage to property arising from the operation and ownership of a particular vehicle. So, yan. Mahal na ang car insurance sa Pilipinas kasi mataas lagi ang claims experience ng cars. So, kung bago pa ang kotse mo, insure mo na yan. Pero kotse mo, luman-luma na. Unang-una, hindi na tinatanggap ng mga insurance company. Pag luma na kotse, ayaw i-cover ng mga insurance company. 10, 12 years, ayaw na nila. Okay? So, yun na yung damage. Marine insurance. Okay. So, provides protection against risk connected to navigation. The major function protects owners of marine interests and protects financial institutions. So, kaya to, nag-i-import ako. Okay? Covered ako ng letter of credit. Covered ako ng nag-export ako, covered ako ng export bills. Kasi pinafinance usually ng financial institutions, yung importation as export mo, okay? Kotse insured pero walang life insurance. Ayan. Eh, trabaho nila yan to convince people that they need both. Huwag mo naman sabihin na, huwag ka na mag-car insurance, mag-life insurance ka na, hindi rin naman tama. But they need both. Okay? Okay. Provide protection against risk connected to navigation. Okay? Yung ship mo, pwedeng, or marami dito yung marine insurance ng cargo. Kasi pwedeng ma-damage, pwedeng nakawin, pwedeng in-jettison, di ba? Kasi pag mayroong problema ang barko, they can throw away cargo legally. Paano kung nadamay doon yung importation mo? Nag-import ka ng isang container ng Jordan, no? Diba? Yari ka. So dapat kinukuha mo ng coverage din yun. Then may PA, parang life insurance pero personal accident. Yung personal accident, both life and non-life nag-offer nito. It pays or indemnifies in case of losses to the person, physical well-being due to the accident. So ang coverage mo lagi accident. So pwedeng individual, pwedeng group, pwedeng student, pwedeng travel. May travel insurance is a form of personal accident. So yan yung mga situation. No? Let's talk about planning. Okay? So planning, dito kulang ang mga tao kasi hindi sila before I move over, you guys okay? Do you have any questions? Sorry, I am really extended. Okay? Sobrang extended. Okay ba kayo? Kasi I don't want to cut the kasi I wanna really teach people properly. Kaya ba yung hindi ba? Marami na pa rin ng exit. Okay na. Baba na attendance natin ngayon. Okay. Boring daw ang insurance. Okay, sige. So, participation fee. Depende yan. May first 5,000, may option pala sa non-life. Kung gusto mong mas mura ang insurance, pero mas malaki yung participation mo. Meron na mas mahal insurance, pero may mga ganun din silang context. Health insurance, I will go through it quickly lang, which is an offshoot of life insurance na benefits. No? May not have time for that. Okay. So life insurance is, bakit natin kailangan mag-cover? Talk about life insurance. Kasi insurance is the most common way of handling various risks that can cause financial losses. In order to reduce these risks, people must seek to minimize or eliminate hazardous elements that increase or decrease the chance of harm, injury, danger, destruction. And how do we do that? We transfer shifts from an individual to a group. Right? And life insurance is about protection of human life value. To do this, you have to do an honest-to-goodness financial needs analysis for your clients, or ako, I call it protection analysis, which is the cornerstone of any good financial plan. If you look at my ladderized approach, before I tell people to start investing, I ask them to be covered properly. Okay? So, skip ko na lang itong So, I do an FNA, or a protection analysis. So, basically, it has a component of needs and sources. So, sa needs, okay, it's immediate. Ano ba yung mga kailangan bayaran pag may nangyari? Education, sana makapag-aral ng anak ko. And, paano sila mabubuhay na wala na ako? So, these are the three components that I always add to compute whether how much coverage in. Kasi, what I don't like to happen is people are just wantonly coming out, 1 million, 2 million, 3. Tsaka yung may shortcut tayo, 3 times your annual income. Pwede yun, pero as a financial advisor, dapat medyo mas deliberate yung approach mo. So I do this. Okay? Ano ba yung mga immediate? Ito yung mga kailangan bayaran. Pag may nangyari sa kanila, within immediately or at least within 6 months. Taxes, hospital, utang, all of these things are part. Diba? So they are hospitalization, burial, funeral, liability, estate, ideally, bayaran mo na. Kasama mo na yan. So, when I share the slides, balikdaanan nyo lang to because, I just, maarte lang ako, I just write everything down. So, hospitalization, burial, utang mo, yung babayaran mo sa estate, miscellaneous cost mo, pangbayad mo sa edukasyon ng mga anak mo, and yung replacement fund. I'll show you how I do it later on. On the other side, may mga sources ka naman, di ba? May cash ka, may investments ka, may life insurance ka, may property ka. Now, these are all sources that you can use. So, cash placement, cash of any currency, set aside, your savings, yung nasa Gcash mo, yung checking account mo, okay? These are your all cash placements, yung pwede money market mo, ano yung investments mo? Yung stocks mo, yung whatever, yung UITF mo, yan, pwede. Life insurance mo, lista mo lahat ng coverage mo, okay? Real estate, pwede mo i-unload, although may limitations ako sa real estate. All of these are sources. You put them together, you see that the difference is your protection gap. It's the gap between the needs and the sources. So, let me show you a little bit how I do it. Right? Para na lang. So, the numbers are just numbers as I'll show you. So, kunyari ito si client ko, 40 years old siya, di ba? I can, assuming na some of them are assumptive in nature, no? Like hospitalization, I put 500,000 kahit na may HMO. Kasi alam natin kulang yan. So 500. Or lately, I've been using as a baseline for me a 1 million. Right? So, regardless, adjust nyo yan sa client nyo. Burial. Lagyan nyo ng allocation amount. Liabilities. Magkano yung utang niya. Ito assuming that the client owes 500,000. Okay? So, yan. Estate. Computin yung estate niya. Totalin yung estate niya. And remove mo yung niya. And 6%. Okay? Assuming that's the 6% of whatever. Okay? And the total needs niya. So, in other words, I need to pay my hospitalization, may utang. And of course, may miscellaneous pa rin siyang amount. So, 2.3. These are your immediate needs. Now, next is, abruptly, tatlong anak ko. Lagyan ko ng tigil 1 million yan na educational fund. You can compute it, pwedeng remaining years, or you can just do one to, hindi naman one to, but, diba, at least meron akong 3 million pang education. Kung kasha, kung kulang, kung sa iba, kung sobra, gagamitin. Basta basically, I tell people. Or, you can do a computation, like, 4 years old, so meron pa siyang 16 years of college, or 17 years of education. So 17 multiplied by a number. I don't look for the future value. I always compute it from a present value because that amount, the 3 million, can now be invested and that will take care of the appreciation, the inflation of education. Educational fund lang siya. Okay? So basically, pondo lang siya. Now, I'll explain the limitations. Then meron din replacement income. Ano na replacement income? Hindi lang naman, di ba, pag nawala ako, hindi lang naman education tsaka yung mga babayaran. Paano na yung pang-araw-araw nilang gastos for the rest of their lives? So, you take your income with you. So, I assess that, magkano ba yung need? Ano ba yung bare minimum need? Hindi ko na binibase sa income, binibase ko sa need nila. So, assessment ko, meeting kami, mabubuhay pa sila. Remember, paid na education, paid na yung bahay na and everything. Mabubuhay pa sila mabubuhay pa kayo sa 100,000 kada buwan. Kung ano man random cash na yun. So, I will use it ako na. Even if he earns 200,000, I will still use basic on the monthly need. Kasi I am very careful not to kasi I've seen some advisors, overshoot nila yung need na insurance. Pag sumusobra yung over-assessment nila, lalo hindi nila naka-close. Kasi, diba, hindi na practical. So ako, I always base it on need. Now, it's your call, whether you want to do it on income or what. Ako, I use it based on expenses. So 100 multiplied by 12, so 1.2 million ang kailangan ko itawid. Now, I will now apply an investment yield. 7%. 7% is not too conservative, but it's not too risky. Diba? I mean, I can find, a combination of stocks and bonds and funds and everything that will still give me 7% or 6%, whatever you're comfortable with. Okay? And then I will use that and I will use annual need over investment yield. So 1.2 million divided by 0.07 will give me 17 million. 17 million invested at 7% will give me 1.2 million a year and or 100,000 a month. Are you following what I'm saying? So this basically tells me that there's a particular fund that I can LOI and draw from that so that I can continue to live. If I add immediate to education, to replacement, I now need 22.5 million. Now, these are merely estimation and appropriation. As to whether it's going to be like this, probably not. Probably a combination of active income and I don't know. Ginagawa lang natin, we are just quantifying something so that may basis yung recommendations natin. Hindi siya, it came out of the air. Now, 22.5 is the need. Pero may sources naman yan. Maraming advisor, ito lang need, bili na kayo ng 20 million sa akin. Hindi, unfair yun sa client. So, ano ba yung mga pwedeng sources niya? May cash yan, may dollar yan. May tatlong insurance company siya. Policy. So, 4 million. May real estate siya na pwede niya i-unload. Now, sa real estate, ito limitations ko. I never add the family home. Bakit? Saan titira yung pamilya? I ask the client, alin ba dito sa mga real estate mo ang willing ka, kung nagkagipitan, ano ba dito ang willing ka i-unload? Kasi pwedeng iba ayaw na unload kasi merong income potential, may ganun. Like ako, I don't want, sa family namin, there are certain things I don't want to unload. Why? Sabi ko, continuous income. So mga ganyan. So you have to assess. So I ended up with 7.2 because this is the amount, this is the properties that my clients are willing to unload that he invested purely on investment purposes. Whether they're going to unload or not, we don't know. Basta we're just assessing. So may sources of 16 million. 22 minus 16. So mayroon pa siyang 6.5 na need. Then I will make my recommendations based on 6.5. Dito na papasok. So pwedeng 3 million VUL, 3 million term. Kasi kung hindi na kaya ng budget. So dito na papasok yung assessment ko kung ano yung need ko sa kanila. Okay? And bibigyan ko kayo ng tip. Matagal ko nang ginagawa ito. Ito yung mga secret ko. Kaya ang lakas ko magbenta nung bata pa ako. Nung iba sa inyo bagong panganak pa lang kayo. Sakit ano? Ganyan yung ginagamit ko. Because apparently, hanggang ngayon, o konting tao pa lang ang matyaga gumawa nito. Kasi, ay, hindi mag-declare kliyente ko. Hindi magkasabi. Hindi mo naman tinatanong eh. Paano mo malaman? Tsaka hindi kasi, ang dating mo kasi, seller, hindi dating mo, hindi planner. Kung dating mo sa kanila, may assessment ka, magdadivulge. Sabi nga na Randall, hindi nagkasabi kliyente. You know, when I was a new advisor, everybody was telling me, hindi mag-declare kliyente. And I proved them wrong. If you come in, open-hearted, open-minded, and you know, they know what you're doing this for them, they will declare these things. Okay? So, may basis ka. Hindi yung, kato na lang, kato. Mali din yun. So, dapat may basis ka. And that's what I've been advocating about proper insurance coverage all these years to many people. Alright? How is it so far for you guys? Okay? Di naman siya complicated. In fact, easy siya. Meron akong assignment sa inyo. Pwede? Pwede ba akong bigyan assignment sa inyo? Okay. I want you to do an assessment of yourselves doing this approach. Pag-practice niyo sarili niyo, tingnan niyo kung tama ang coverage niyo. Tingnan niyo kung gaano kayong malayo. And ngayon maiintindihan niyo ano yung dinadaan ng maraming tao. Doon niyo makita na kaya ko ba talaga bumili ng BUL o dapat term ako. Gets niyo? Basta importante covered kayo. Can you do this? Now, dito na papasok. For those of you who are comfortable enough to share with me and wants me to see it, you can share your assessment with me and I will help you understand it better. Okay? Kasi, remember my principle, you cannot give what you don't have. I want you, each and every one of you, I want you to have proper coverage for yourself first and foremost. Wala kang pambayad ng premium, hindi mag-term ka. Okay? Wala kang pera ko, hindi magtrabaho ka. Kaya ka nag-advisor, galingan mo. Diba? Diba, gets nyo yun? Para may pambayad ka. Okay? So, yan yung mga situation. I-prioritize ito. Importante ito sa inyo. Okay? Sa non-life, meron din. Okay, planner must first, ito lang, mas madali na life, no? A planner must always review suitability and match requirements. Perils must be understood. Now, ako I believe sa health, no? Tatanong, sa health kasi, you can do it, I have HMO and I have health insurance. So, meron kayo mga companies, no? I'm doing a, soon, no? If they agree, I want to do a feature on term products with good health coverages. So kung yun na kaya mo-afford, bili mo muna yun. Kasi importante, may illness ka, may ganun kang ano. Kasi iba na talaga kayo eh. You need those things. And make sure that pag nagbenta kayo, isama niyo yung proper health coverage also. Okay? So huwag yung tatanggalin nyo. Kasi iba, tanggalin na natin to kasi tataas na premium, medyo matipid yung approach. So non-life naman, a planner must review suitability and match requirement. They must understood appropriate coverage and be recommended. And pag property na, I recommend the replacement value. Kasi sa property, the common is depreciated. Magkano kung binili, yun ang basis mo. Dapat yung coverage ng, let's say, ng building mo, inaakit mo rin over the years. Kasi, pag over the years, nagmamahal ang construction and reconstruction. So, maybe 10 million siya dati, pero hindi na siya 10 million, baka 12 million na siya. So, kailangan mo itaas yung coverage mo. Eh, marami ayaw mag-ganon kasi nagtitipid. Pero that's how you do it. It's replacement value principle. Okay? So, basically, I just do this, no? I show it to them. Let's say, residents, reconstruction cost of residents is 28,000 per square. You can just do the numbers. You can upgrade it. 30,000 daw is the 30,000 is the good quality today. So multiply it, and that's my basis of my coverage. You do not cover the land, just the content in the building. Then you can add the content. So ganyan lang. Yung pinapaupa niyang kliyente niya, negosyo niya, yung investment niya na pinaparental niya ng bahay, mas mura kasi for rental lang, 22 lang. Yung office niya, mas mura kasi mas bare. Pero mas mahal yung content. So, yan yung question. Pati yung kotse, di ba? You can cover it. You can do something as simple as this. Or at least, you can talk to a reputable non-life advisor. Sobrang daming, how do I say this without sounding so offensive? Sobrang daming hindi okay na nagbebenta ng non-life. So, be very, very careful. That's why I only deal with highly reputable brokers. I never deal with kung sino-sino lang. Kasi meron na akong case na yung binayad ko, okay, pumasok yung cheque ko, okay, pero hindi pumasok sa company. Saan napunta yun? Paano nangyari yun? Maraming brokers na ganun, so mag-ingat kayo ng ganyan. Kasi sa life insurance, may fit eh, di ba? Sa non-life, hindi ganun. So be careful with those things. Alright? So, we have ended another extended night. Okay? And along the way, marami na akong sinagot na questions for you guys. Basta, do you have any more questions for me that I can answer for you? Any questions? Wala na. Sorry, I hope we did not feel na masyado kung ginawang elementary itong session natin tonight. But I needed people to create their correct fundamentals and baseline so that they can make the better recommendation. I hope this is helpful for you. Estate planning, okay, iba. Hindi ako papagap na estate planning kasi hindi ko naman forte yun. Okay, so maybe you can, Attorney Cabrera might be a great person to approach that. I specifically did not include estate planning in masterclass because it takes, I guess, different continuous learning for you to be able to do that. What are my thoughts on fund switching sa BUL? I don't recommend fund switching. I do why? Kasi objective I invested in that particular fund because I know it's going to perform well. So, maraming cases kasi na equity, bumagsak, tsaka nag-switch. Nung umakyat, naiwan sila sa funds. Hindi maganda yun. I would only recommend, personal to, I can only recommend fund switching pag ganito, no? Let's say, I bought a BUL or MF or whatever, equity, for retirement. Tapos, 30 ako na binili ko. Maybe baka 50, 55, pwede ko na ilipat kasi nakalaki na yung returns. That's para ayoko na ng volatility. Then that's when I recommend, okay, that kind of switching. Okay, mastery sessions, super helpful. Okay. Estate planning. Okay. I think hindi ako Even the pool of people around me, diba? Plus kasi, alam mo honestly, with the train law, it's very easy to do estate planning now. Tsaka, eto brotherly advice. Sobrang daming advisors. Aral na aral ng estate planning, pero walang conversion sa estate planning. Mas madami ka pang makukuha na kliyente if you focus on retirement planning. Kasi unless you particularly niche on the super rich people, especially with the estate train law, you might waste too much effort on estate planning. This is me, not saying it's everyone. Because there are other things that you need to do first. Okay, so yun lang. But if you feel that you can learn, go ahead. Diba? This is a learning opportunity for you. Okay? Ako lang kasi parang feel ko maraming advisors na estate planning, yung event estate planning, pero ang baba ng conversion. Mas mataas pa conversion ng retirement planning, mas mataas pa conversion ng ganun sa mga ganun bagay. Okay. So, allocation ng investment vehicle sa BUL, ano po ang mas magandang combi, balance at equity. Personal ko hindi ako big fan of balance. Kasi feeling ko minsan naghahatakan. Mas gusto ko meron akong equity at meron akong bonds. So may equity ako, yung iba kasi equities, at meron akong bonds. Hinihiwalay ko yan. Hindi ko yan sinasama. Feeling ko kasi minsan naghahatakan. But that's my observation. Right? Ako, sir, OFWO, 6 years old, and for good, na daw po sa na po recommendation. At downside kasi ng health, sobrang limited ang options mo sa Pilipinas. So, kailangan talaga mag-invest ka, mag-save ka, may pera ka. Merong mga pang-seniors na, MaxiCare has them. Siyempre, maraming limitations or PhilHealth. So, maraming limitations pag may edad sa health. That's the downside. And even yung mga term insurance na humihinto at 60, 65, di ba? Okay. BCCI is really helpful. Okay, it's for clients. You're doing it for your clients and everything. Okay, life and non-life pa. Kasi insurance yan, di ba? Mas approve ako, equity, okay. Assessment, equity. Why do I like equity? Because I'm looking for growth. Kasi that's my objective. Pero it's not for everybody. In fact, in the last 4 years, bonds are outperforming equities. Malaki difference. Okay? So, does that mean that, pero looking forward, I know the limitations of bonds also. So, I used it for diversification purposes. May bonds ako, may bond fund ako, meron akong equities. Okay? May stocks din ako. Okay. Francis, if you want to share with me lang naman, if you want my honest to goodness opinion, if you want to share, I can do it. I can check it and see what I think is lacking and missing for you. Tama, Tony Cabrera has a CWP. That's something you can consider. I love the guy. Highly knowledgeable when it comes to estate. Okay. For time funding, what do you suggest to get? Walang straightforward yan. It's always a combination. Portfolio creation pa rin. Merong equities, may funds, may insurance, may property. You have to learn how to do it right. So how long do you do financial tutorial with a client? Hindi ako one sitting guy. I really spend time with my client. Kasi yung mga clients na minamadali mo, don't expect good premiums out of it. Kasi minadali mo Upuan mo yan, aralin mo. It's unfair to them na mabili. Kasi di ba ang hilig natin, galing nga one sitting. Pwede naman talaga. Pero feeling ko hindi ka mag-evolve. Hindi ka gagaling kung ganun approach mo sa clients mo. So, spend enough time, di ba? Assess properly. And what di ba? Yung akala mong 10,000 premium, 100 pala. Kasi minadali mo hindi mo na-assess kagad. Real market is the newly expanded middle class. Don't forget that. Okay, that's good. Estate planning is not covered talaga. It's never been covered here. Estate settlement, I just compute. Basically, it's a 6% rule. Assets multiplied by 6%. So that's a straightforward computation for estate settlement. Okay. How early should one get coverage po? Okay. Ito kayo magalit sa akin. In fact, maglalabas ka po ng, hindi ko alam kung video or TikTok. Number one, okay. Number one, I do not agree and believe that we should cover kids with life insurance. Okay. Ano ba purpose ng life insurance? Protection. Sino ipoprotect ng bata? Wala. Unless child actor yan. Okay, na siya bumubuhay sa pamilya. Ayan, oo. Pero, hindi. So gusto ko mag-ipon para sa kanya. Then you get a mutual fund. You get a UIT if you buy stocks with them. Pero, dapat ikaw covered. You know, I've always encouraged clients who wants to get policy with the children. Binabalik ko sa kanila. Ina-assess ko muna. Before we do this, we want to make sure that you are properly covered. So, binabalik ko sa parent kasi it's the parent who needs insurance, not the kids. Okay? So, kaya magalit sa akin ha, para yan yung professional stand ko when it comes to that. I have kids. I never bought. When they were younger, I did know better. I bought some. But when these younger boys know. Now that they're older,